Message is being broadcast by the Department of Defense of the Republic. At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere.
Discovery Houston, 20 seconds to LOS T-drift.
Contact, nice to be in orbit. The first message that comes to you is you are a divine being. You matter. You count. You come from realms of unimaginable power and light, and you will return to those realms.
The vast stretches of the unknown and the unanswered and the unfinished still far outstrip our collective comprehension. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
Broadcasting from a shack on a hill in the mossy creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. I'm Joe Roop, and this is Lighting the Void. Welcome back. I hope you all had a fantastic weekend. We're going to kick off this new week, already halfway through September. Fall is coming up close, and right now it's Monday, September the 16th, and we're live on the Fringe FM. Tonight, our guest is researcher, experiencer, and UFO experiencer. Really cool story that our guest had tonight at around Area 51. And we're going to talk about that, too, with Shawn Kevin Jason, as well as he's got some experiences and abilities that we probably discussed, too. If you want to call in tonight, that number is 1-800-588-0335. You can also call the direct number at 501-424-5130. It was really cool. I want to tell you guys something real quick. We watched a dark song. We had the after party after the Friday the 13th show, and I thought, man, I don't know how many people are going to show up to this thing because, you know, to ask everybody to download like a new software and then come in and hang out and watch a movie, it doesn't always work out so well. But we had a little small party. I think Jose came out, Dennis, Blake. I hope I don't leave anybody out. Don, a few people showed up. Some other people showed up. I didn't really recognize who they were. And so we did. It was fun. It was like a 3 a.m. Friday. It was actually Friday the 14th. Watched a dark song, and it was kind of freaky watching it that early in the morning, actually. So we had fun. So I want to thank all of you guys for coming out and doing that, too. We cannot start the show without thanking our sponsors. First and foremost, ancientlifeoil.com. If you are into using CBD oil, which all of you should be, I hope, you need the best, and the best is ancientlifeoil.com. Ancient Life Oil. I use the, actually, I've got two of them here, but my favorite one is just the regular, all natural flavor, 250 milligram, but they got super strength, but this one works just good for me. And if you go to ancientlifeoil.com, you can grab a bottle, tincture, or salve, and then just, let them know we sent you. Also, getthetea.com, www.getthetea.com. Our partner in crime, Ronnie McMullen, is making waves in the health industry as far as detoxing and keeping those intruders out of us. And check out his YouTube channel, Health Matters Now. It's really a good YouTube channel. He comes up, talks for about 5 or 10 minutes, just talks to you about what's on his mind, and it's fantastic. It's really cool. Go check that out, too. Also, preparewiththefringe.com. Don't get caught unawares. Make sure you're prepared. If you go to preparewiththefringe.com, anything you buy over $100 is going to get you free shipping. All of that supports the show and the network. You can also support by donating, by going to the website and donating using the donate button. And thank you all for those of you that have donated. The program that we did with Robert Bruce ended September the 15th. Yeah, it just ended. So I want to tell you guys that Astral Dynamics course, I think Amandala, me, and I don't know who else was in there that did that course, was fantastic. It was probably one of the best. And it's up there with Greg Doyle's course very easily. So, yeah, if you want to learn that out of the body stuff, you need Greg Doyle, Robert Bruce. I just want to give you guys a quick shout out too. Now, if you want a journalistic approach to the topic we're going to start off with tonight, which is the UFOs and investigating UFOs, I would highly suggest you go to UFOseekers.com. Season 4 is about to launch. I hope all of you seen the trailer. And I thought I retweeted it, but I'll do it again. The season premiere trailer is out. It's up, and I cannot wait to see what they're going to do next. It is really cool because I watched the trailer and I saw, like Tracy scaling mountains, and they did a really good job. It was intense. It looked like a movie trailer, so I can't wait to see what they got next. I mean, because last time they did this, they put out the most famous shots of Area 51 anybody's ever seen, right? So what do you think they might do this time? I don't know if they can live up to that, but we'll see. You can also go to their website, UFOseekers.com. If you want to see what I'm talking about specifically, go to youtube.com/UFO Seekers. And if you've had a sighting, give them a call at 661-UFO-7889. Now, every now and then we'll run across someone that has had some incredible experiences in their life. And it's funny how these things tie into ufology or some type of contact. I don't know why this happens to certain types of people, but it definitely does. It's a running story that happens to a lot of people. So this is a guest that we're going to talk to tonight. We're going to try to put some of this stuff together, hopefully. But, in the void, all we can do is try to ask the right questions. So Shawn Kevin Jason is a lifetime experiencer and an independent researcher, and he has been on both sides of the paranormal phenomena. His work began in earnest after having a close encounter with a black triangle in 1996 on the way to Area 51, and he is also a self-proclaimed precognitive and believes his ability to foresee future events has led to new insights on the nature of reality and its relationship with the unexplained. His story has been featured in books by authors Kim Carlsberg and Ryan Sprague. In addition, he has recently made an appearance in Mysteries Decoded on the CW network and an upcoming documentary series on the Trail of UFOs by Small Town Monsters, which is due out in 2020. And he's got a Facebook page out right now, which is facebook.com, Shawn Kevin Jason, spelled SHAWN, Shawn. Shawn, thanks for coming on the show, man.
Oh, thank you for having me, Joe. Great to be here.
Yeah, I'm very interested in your story because it seems you've had a lot of things happen in your life, and obviously I kind of want to start with the UFO thing. But before we do that, is that when everything started for you? The precog, all these abilities, the experiences you've had, or did you have all of that and then it led up to the Area 51 incident?
Actually, it started all in my teenage years, so it was something that was already there, long before I had that encounter with the triangle. Of course, a lot of times telling a story, most people only get a part of it, so they may hear just the specific part where I encountered the triangle and nothing that led up to it, and they may say, well, obviously that sounds like a man-made craft, but then I tell the whole story. And, a lot of times they'll get lost because then they say, well, then it sounds like you're describing some kind of extraterrestrial encounter rather than something that was man-made. So without, giving the full scope of the whole story and everything I've been through, it's kind of hard to, see it one way or the other without having all the details.
So things started happening to you in your teenage years. What did you have any type of experiences as far as dream out-of-body stuff, or was it more like paranormal haunting, poltergeist type things happen to you?
Well, actually, it was kind of odd the way it started, and the way I first, developed this ability. I was actually coming from an abusive home, so I had a lot of issues at home with my father, and of course, that led to many problems, and, being young and rebellious, I was kind of striking out against my father. And then on top of that, I started my freshman year of high school, and kind of the oddball, I had just moved back to the States from Germany, where I had lived for 4 years. So unknowingly, I had picked up an accent when I lived there. I was an Air Force brat, so my father was stationed there for 4 years. And when I when we moved back to the States, I was kind of the outsider because everyone thought I was a foreigner. Oddly enough, even though, I was born right here in the U.S. of A., you get an accent, and of course, the kids are going to pick on you and whatnot. So I got bullied a lot in my 9th grade year, and that just really led to me just running with the wrong crowd, running the streets, ditching school, getting in trouble with the cops, that sort of lifestyle, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, basically.
Right.
And it happened one day. I was just hanging out on a street corner with my friend. We were kind of just talking and trying to decide what kind of trouble we're going to get into next, and, who's having a party or, whatnot, things like that. And as we're talking, right in the middle of that, I just get this very strong knowing kind of sensation that there's a cop car approaching us from behind. And it was strong enough that I interrupted my friend mid-sentence, and it was like, hey, is there a cop car approaching us from behind right now? And he didn't respond. His face kind of just had this shock, look, his mouth just dropped, and he's just staring at me. And right then and there, I kind of knew, I must have nailed it, because he just has that dumbfounded look on his face. And I turn around and I see this cop car approaching. And sure enough, it was right on it.
Wow. Okay. So was this your first experience with precognitive things, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, that was when it started. That was the point I could nail down to when it first started. Now, it wasn't actually a precog experience, because eventually later on I would figure out what exactly happened that day and how it worked out. But shortly thereafter, I was kind of dumbfounded myself. How exactly did I know this cop car was approaching us from behind, even though it wasn't in my field of view? It was coming up from a ways behind, but yet I was clearly conscious of the fact that this car was approaching, this police car. And I figured if I had done it once and I was right on the money, why couldn't I do it again? So I began just kind of focusing on being able to do it again. And it did happen again. But the second time it happened around, it was totally different than the first time, whereas the first time it was just kind of this confused knowledge. You just know it's going to happen. The second time it happened, it was more like you're in a room with a lot of static electricity, and you can kind of feel your hair standing up all over your body and goosebumps everywhere. And I had that, that physical sensation at the same time, kind of a gut instinct that there's a cop car approaching from a specific direction. And, of course, it was right on the money again. And it went on that way for a while, months, to where slowly this ability began to develop and get better and better. And I was a big fan of Spider-Man growing up. Loved Spider-Man comic books. And, of course, if you're a Spider-Man fan, he has his Spidey sense.
Yeah, you were developing your Spidey sense, right. Gotcha.
Yeah, so I kind of related it kind of like that. This is some kind of like sixth sense where I can, sense danger before it happens. But in this case, of course, it was, cop cars, which was, I was deathly afraid of them, because the last thing I wanted was to get busted by the cops, thrown in juvie, and have to answer to my father.
Man, I've been there, actually. The few times I did get locked up when I was a teenager, which I got thrown in jail a few more times outside of being a teenager. But when I was a teenager, that was the one thing I was afraid of too. So I can definitely relate to that. So now let me ask you this. Do you think that, this is kind of a deep question, but I've noticed something about precog abilities with people that get bad feelings before things happen, right? People that just out of nowhere, they know something. And it's not like, I'm not talking deja vu. Now, you say you come from an abusive, you were raised in an abusive environment. And I kind of was too. And I've had people tell me that I've had precog abilities. Do you think that this ability is like a supernatural phenomenon that could happen because the body and the psyche and the mind is adapting to being abused, right? Because it's trying to be safer, because it can't just be like a normal human. You know, if you watch X-Men, I know I'm getting kind of geeky with you here, but if you watch X-Men and stuff, what happens to them, right? They get put in a weird environment, and it causes them to mutate, you see? And I wonder if that's what happened to you, maybe.
Well, certainly the situation I was in, had it not been for, the bullying in school, the abuse at home, putting me in that position, that ability may have never even manifested at all. But, as I've been researching this problem for 30 years now, my understanding of what we think is precognition has totally changed to basically having a different outlook on how we relate and interact with space-time. But, as I get into these other experiences, some of that will come out, and we can certainly talk more on that.
Yeah, because
but like I was saying, sorry?
Yeah, I'd love to talk more on that. That's interesting what you just said. So you're thinking, so precog is not what we think it is, according to what you think, right? It's not some kind of supernatural ability that some of us have. It has to do with space-time, right?
Basically. So, as I was saying, it was basically kind of like a static electricity feeling and kind of this gut instinct of where this cop car was going to be next. And at that time, I thought this was just some weird ability I had to detect cops. And it was good enough that my friend had nicknamed me Radar. And so everyone was calling me Radar, and when we're going to go get into trouble, it was kind of one of those bring me along because, he can sense cops. And it was, like I was saying, it was going for several months like that. And, I entered my sophomore year of high school and became more of a loner at that point and was ditching a lot of school. And one day I'm ditching school, basically, show up to school, get off the bus, and walk off campus. Probably walked about a block away from school and was hanging around these businesses up and down this main drag near where I was going to high school at. And I had nowhere to go, but I just knew I didn't want to be in school. And there was like a little strip mall where I was kind of ditching class in the back of this business. And hiding behind some trash cans and whatnot. And as I'm just sitting there smoking some cigarettes, and suddenly I hear this voice scream, run, really forceful, just run, a bunch of exclamations after. And it absolutely freaked me out, scared the hell out of me. I couldn't tell whether this was someone, actually physically saying run, or this is something I'm hearing in my head. But all I know is I hear this voice tell me to run, and it doesn't tell me what direction to go, how fast to run, anything like that, just run. So instinctively, I just start booking it, start running my ass off. Right. And I decided to just run around the strip mall towards the main street. And as soon as I get around the corner of the strip mall and get to the street, then I see why, this voice was telling me to run. On my right-hand side were 3 truant cars approaching me at high speed, and on the left-hand side were 2 more truant cars. So there were 5 truant cars that were basically converging on me. And about the time I get to the middle of the street, all of them are slamming on their brakes and, trying to circle and box me in. And I'm just running full speed towards this wall on the other side of the street without any clue how I'm going to get over this wall. At the same time, they're all slamming on the brakes, jumping out of the cars, trying to catch me before I get over this wall. And I'm booking full speed, and I just make this flying leap at the wall and pretty much land halfway up the wall on my feet, where I just propel myself straight up the side of this wall and over the top of it. And I'm not an athletic person, never into sports. I'm not the running track and field kind of person. So doing that, it was a feat in itself, something I've never done before or since. But it was like I just flew over this wall. And on the other side is a bunch of German shepherds, unfortunately. So one of them grabs a hold of my leg, and I'm still going full speed, rips my pants, jump over another fence, And I'm just booking it because, I don't want to get caught. And obviously they're going to call my father and let him know I was ditching school and whatnot. So I got away. Eventually it ran down a few streets, found someone's backyard to ditch in for a while, some bushes I can hide in. And I must have sat in that person's backyard for hours on end until I knew it was lunchtime and I can come out and head back to school. And the whole time I'm sitting there, I'm just dumbfounded by this voice I heard, telling me to run. Because I had never happened before, and I was so used to this kind of goosebump feeling I would get before encountering a cop car, that this whole run thing, this voice thing, was a total new thing. And on top of that, there was a very distinct physical sensation that would accompany these voices. So if you can imagine, maybe you're on a roller coaster, that part where you're kind of going up and coming back down, and for a brief moment you can feel your stomach floating up to your throat, basically, like you're, like it's floating, and then kind of a cross between that and maybe if you get the butterflies in your stomach before you're about to go on stage and make a presentation. It was kind of a cross between those two feelings.
But you didn't hear any audible voices, right? It was just more like a feeling of a voice. You didn't hear anything like audibly, did you?
Well, that was the thing. For it being the first time, I was so confused by the experience. I didn't know whether it was audible, like, some disembodied voice talking to me, or whether it was something I was only hearing in my head. But as the experiences go on, I eventually learned that, it wasn't something audible. But the first time it happened, I was just totally dumbfounded and confused by the experience. So, that happened, and, I just kind of blew it off, went on, still ditching school, getting into trouble. And there was an arcade I used to hang out, not too far from the strip mall where I was ditching at. And I was ditching school another day and playing at the arcade. And for whatever reason, this particular day, a lot of people were ditching school. So the place was packed. And I'm sitting there playing some old gangster shoot-'em-up game. And while I'm playing the video game, I hear this voice tell me to keep playing. The same voice, the same physical sensations. And, it said keep playing. And I was like dumbfounded, because I was like, well, I'm playing. What do you mean keep playing? What is that supposed to mean? I'm trying to interpret what exactly this voice is telling me. And next thing you know, I hear all this commotion going on in front of the arcade. And the game I'm playing on just happens to be by the back exit. So a second or two after I hear all this commotion going on in the front of the arcade, then I see a bunch of truant officers walking in his back door right next to me. And I realized at that point that's what the voice was talking about, keep playing. So I'm looking around, you see all these teenagers basically running around the arcade with their heads chopped off, trying to figure out what to do, how they're going to get out of there, how they're going to escape, because truant had surrounded the place, was coming in through both entrances and gathering everyone up. So, I followed the voice and just kept playing the entire time, like it didn't faze me one bit. And as they're rounding everyone up, dragging everyone out of the arcade, I stood my ground, kept playing the video game like it didn't faze me one bit. So they get to the point where they eventually clear out the entire place with the exception of the owner of the business and myself. And I didn't break a sweat, didn't let them bother me in any way. One of the truant officers came over to me and is just staring me up and down, giving me a dirty look while I'm playing this game and trying to not mind him. And he eventually just asked me, how old are you? And I just blurted back, I'm old enough that you don't see me running around with my head chopped off like these kids. And he gave me a smirk and he left.
Nice.
And they all cleared out. I kept playing, and the owner when they finally cleared out, the owner was like, they're gone. And I quit playing, and he was like, how in the hell are you still standing here? And I was just dumbfounded. I was like, I just kept playing.
So you didn't feel the danger that's weird. That is kind of strange. So you didn't feel the danger or the chaos that everybody else was feeling. Yeah, so you definitely have had some, I mean, you noticed it, but you didn't feel a threat, right? Like you didn't feel as if anything was going to happen. Is that what you were saying?
I trusted in the voice, so when it told me to keep playing, I obeyed it, and I did exactly what it told me, and I just kept playing the video game like, no big deal. They're here to round up everyone else but me because I'm too old to be, taken back to school, even though, it was far from the truth. So certainly they're ditching, but, if he played a part, so you can get away with it. So,
okay. I think I'm understanding
what the voice told me. Huh?
I think I'm understanding now, because a lot of times when people tell me they hear voices, or they heard a voice or whatever, a lot of times people, after I talk to them, it's a feeling that they had. But for you, I think it's a bit more than that. It's an actual voice that you're hearing, either in your head or audibly, right? Am I correct by assuming that?
Correct. And later on, I'll get one of the later experiences, I actually have a vision. And there's a reason why you hear a voice versus a vision. And as I'll get into it more, why it tells you certain things versus relay the information another way. So after that incident, that was the second time I heard the voice. And the following year, as I'm going into my junior year, I cleaned up my acts, totally became, a preppy more or less, going to school, getting good grades, that whole spiel. And it totally turned my life around. And I figured that was it. I wasn't running on the streets anymore, getting into trouble, doing anything of the sort. And figured, if I'm not doing that anymore, then what good is some radar ability to detect cops?
Right.
So I figured whatever this thing was, it was over with.
I got you. Yeah, that makes total sense. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to go ahead and take our first break, but we'll continue this story here. Yeah, because I'm interested in this, actually. I know there's some questions on people's minds, like, oh, this guy's hearing voices, but it sounds to me like the voices have been actually helping you. So it's more than just somebody hearing voices. We'll continue this when we come back right after these messages with Shawn Kevin Jason. I'm Joe Roop. This is Lighting the Void, live on the Fringe FM. Stay with us.
This is Corbin, son of the one and only Joe Roop, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Did you know that qualified patients can access medical cannabis in all 50 states? CannaSense is a medical cannabis collective that helps patients in all 50 states gain access to cannabis medication. CannaSense does this with a streamlined process and strict compliance with the Compassionate Use Act of 1996, the Affordable Care Act, and the U.S. Constitution. It is important for each patient to understand the legalities involved, the costs, and the benefits of cannabis medication. Through truth, legalization, and education, the medical benefits of cannabis will supplant recreational perceptions, and the real vision for change will be realized. Let the people and their personal doctors take control of their medical cannabis decisions before the greed of big business takes over. The tipping point for change is today, and CannaSense is ready to lead the charge and enable legal access for all qualified patients to medical cannabis through its proven system. For more information, go to thefringe.fm/care or click the banner on the website today.
I think by now we can get the information.
I love magic, and on Lighting the Void, each and every week, you will get to hear shows about magic, mysticism, and many other subjects that stretch your mind and imagination. So when I got my mind on the magic and the magic on my mind, I listened to Lighting the Void on the Fringe FM. It's magic.
May the gods look with favor upon you.
You're wondering what we're going to do to you, aren't you? I'm getting older and noticing that my body just doesn't work as well as it used to, so I like to keep fit as possible by hitting the gym a few times a week. Recently, I started having a nagging bicep pain, and it got so bad I couldn't even lift the weights. When I was complaining about it to a friend, he told me about angioprim. He said chelation helps remove toxins, heavy metals, and cholesterol in veins and arteries that may cause blockages. You know, after just 1 week of taking angioprim, the pain was gone, and now I'm back in the gym full strength. Scientific research proves the active ingredient in angioprim has superior oral chelation action that helps promote cardiovascular health. So to learn more, go to angioprim.com. That's ANGIOPRIM.com, or talk to a trained consultant. Call Angioprim toll free at 877-882-7221. You'll feel better with more energy. Call 877-882-7221 or go to the website angioprim.com.
Come, walk through the mossy creek and up the hill. Never mind the flashing lights and otherworldly shadows. They stay hidden within the trees. Come, step up to the shack and begin your journey to the answers that you seek. This is Lady Anne, and you are listening to Lighting the Void on the Fringe FM.
Okay, here we go. AncientLifeOil.com. AncientLifeOil.com. Now this is for CBD. AncientLifeOil.com. Again, for CBD. Where do I get CBD? AncientLifeOil.com. It's pretty good stuff. Organic, non-GMO. We are the Ferrari of CBDs. AncientLifeOil.com. You know, they say when you mention a person's name 3 times when you first meet, that you're going to remember. So I'd say to you, nice to meet you, AncientLifeOil.com. It's AncientLifeOil.com, right? Nice to know that you help people. AncientLifeOil.com. Think about this. Occasional stress, occasional anxiety, occasional inflammation, occasional stiffness, and intruders that get you down. AncientLifeOil.com. Okay, so I'm going to give you a fact for the day. So Ancient Life Oil does not help you with business deals. Hold on a second. If you feel better, it could help you make a better decision. Okay, I'm wrong. Just remember to go to AncientLifeOil.com.
All right, everyone, this is Justin from the UK. Excuse the chitty. If you're into the Fringe and you want to hear the brass tacks, my old china plate, Joe Roop and his guests on Lighting the Void will open your mince pies. You need to shut your north and south and use your 10-speed gears and listen to them bubble. You could hear a Barry Crocker, no Brussels, but he ain't no holy friar. Anyway, you be the Barnaby Rudge and take a butcher's.
You're listening to Lighting the Void. The call-in number is 1-800-588-0335. If you would like to text, you can text in at 501-777-5631.
All right, welcome back to Lighting the Void. Tonight, our guest, fascinating story so far, Shawn Kevin Jason is with us. And, so if you're hearing voices, which Shawn has already told us about, that he's heard voices, and these voices helped him with we might seem mundane things like how to dodge police or whatever, but the voices seem to be accurate in their predictions. Interesting stuff so far, and this all leads to other experiences like a UFO flying over or around Area 51, which we will get to later on in the program. But I'm wondering, at any point in time, Shawn, did you feel like the voices you were hearing, because I'm just thinking about what I would think, am I going crazy? Like, am I hearing stuff? Or did you ever have that thought? Because to me, that would be like a natural thought for anybody. Like, am I going crazy? Is this real? You know, what's going on?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, usually when it comes to someone saying, you know, I hear voices, well, you know, first thing you're going to think is the person that's schizophrenic and just out of their minds. They get, you know, they have to be crazy, or we tend to think, okay, disembodied, you know, voices, maybe some spirit, it's God talking to us, it's the devil talking to us, it's some kind of telepathic ability, someone else talking to us. You know, there's a whole list we can run down of reasons we tend to think people hear voices, but as we get into it, in my theories that I've been working on, we'll see that there's a possible alternative explanation that we probably never saw coming. So like I was saying, after that second time hearing the voice, telling me to keep playing, I had cleaned up my act and figured that was it with this whole radar ability, if you will, and figured it wasn't going to manifest itself anymore just because, I wasn't that person anymore. So I had joined up a softball league and started playing softball, and had joined up with the youth center on Nellis Air Force Base, and we would play at Freedom Park out there on the base. And it was late in the season, playing a night game, and I'm sitting on the, sitting in the dugout. Our team was up at bat. And as I'm sitting there, I heard the voice again. And I was shocked because the voice was telling me I'm gonna take the pitcher out. I'm gonna shotgun the pitcher. And I was, shocked because here it was happening again, but this had nothing to do with the cop car. And on top of that, it's telling me basically I'm going to take out the pitcher with a line drive. So I figured, well, here's an opportunity. I have my whole team with me, so I can tell everyone what's going to happen, which I did. I began to tell all my teammates, watch this. I'm going to take that pitcher out. I'm going to shotgun her with a line drive. And I was the second up to bat, so I'm telling all my teammates this. The other person in front of me, I can't remember whether they made it to base or got struck out, but I get up to the plate. And my team is all chanting, take her out, take her out, take her out. And they're just chanting this over and over. And, of course, it's softball, co-ed team. She throws the underhand pitch, and I swing, miss, strike one. And I'm like, oh, shit, I just told everyone what's going to happen, and it looks like I'm going to strike out here. Is it possible this voice is wrong, and it's not going to happen at all? So I'm getting a little bit concerned and worried that maybe this voice is actually not going to, it's not going to come true. So second pitch comes, it's good. I put everything I have into this ball, and I killed it. I killed this ball. And it was like the second I hit the ball, it was as if everything just slowed down. And I'm watching this ball just line drive straight for her. And I can see in slow motion, she's trying to bring both of her hands in front of herself to catch the ball. But I put everything I had into that swing, and she couldn't react fast enough before the ball just plowed square into her chest, right between her tits. And I just see her flying backwards off the mound and dropping on the ground behind it. And at this point, I'm thinking, well, hit the ball, run. So I'm running for first base, and it didn't really dawn on me until I'm halfway towards first base, and I see she's still lying there, and she's unresponsive, and she's not moving. And I just stopped, and it hit me at that point that it happened. You're so caught up in the game at the moment. I hit the ball, your first reaction is just to run. I'm not even thinking about the fact that I just told everyone that's exactly what I'm going to do to her. And, of course, that's what happened. And I'm standing there, and I look to my right, and all my teammates are standing up against the chain link fence that was there around the dugout. And they have that same kind of look my friend did when this all went, when it first happened. They're just jaw dropped, staring at me, staring at her. I'm looking at her. I'm waiting for her to move, and she's not moving. She's not responding. And at this point, I'm freaking out because I think I just killed the girl. And, the field was dead silent. You could hear a pin drop because everyone's just staring at her, waiting for her to start moving, get up, brush herself off. And we're waiting, and we're waiting, and we're waiting. And I'm thinking, I probably should run over to the girl and see if she's okay, see if she's still breathing, maybe.
Yeah, probably. Right. Yeah.
Because at that point, I swore I killed her, and I'm thinking, oh, God, I'm going to go to prison now because I just told everyone that's exactly what I was going to do to her. And it seemed like, forever. And eventually her coach ran out onto the field and her parents ran out onto the field and they were checking her out. And fortunately she was still alive. Apparently it had knocked the breath out of her and knocked her unconscious. And so I walked the rest of the way to first base. They pulled her from the game, put in a relief pitcher, and that was that. And, we played that team several times again throughout the season. But even though she, much to her credit, she remained a pitcher for that team. But anytime I was up to bat, I was always given a walk. She would never pitch me another ball again. So after that happened, I was definitely scared of this voice and this ability because, I was afraid I might hurt someone with it the next time, it tells me to do something and I go through with it.
How long between the instances between the video game or the arcade and when you were playing a softball? How much of a distance between those two times?
This was about a year, 1 year span. So those three incidences happened over the span of 1 year.
Okay. All right. And so the next one was quicker or further away?
A long time. So after the whole softball game incident, like I said, I was definitely afraid of this voice, this ability, whatever was, going on. At that point, I realized this wasn't some radar ability for detecting cops or something, bigger going on. But I wanted it to stop. I wanted it to go away. I didn't want it, to be any part of my life after that. So this was my junior year. And for the longest time, that was it. I thought I was done with it. Later on, I got interested into UFOs. It was something I was interested in from my childhood because my father used to have a collection of books and magazines from the 50s and 60s on UFOs that I got really into when I was a kid and first started reading. But after the X-Files came on the air in 93, I kind of picked that interest back up and started buying books on the subject, magazines, reading everything I could get my hands on. And, of course, this was the time when, Bob Lazar was making waves and the whole Area 51 and all of that. And living in Las Vegas, it was only a 2 hours drive from town. So I would make frequent, drives up to Area 51 at night, hang out there at night, hoping to see something. And I had done this quite a bit. Unfortunately, I had never seen anything for all the trips I had made up there. So one night I am at work. At the time, this was before I started my IT career. So I was doing pizza delivery then. And I was working in the kitchen, sweeping up the cornmeal. It was a slow night, not much business. And as I'm cleaning the kitchen floor, the voice came back to me, and it told me to go to Area 51. And, of course, the same physical sensation that would accompany this voice. And, again, I was freaking out because it had been years now since that whole softball incident. And I thought whatever this was, I was done with, I didn't have it anymore. And yet here it was telling me to go to Area 51. And, of course, I knew at the same time the only reason I would go to Area 51 was in hopes of having an encounter with the UFO. And there was some confusion, too, because, I read enough material by then to know that a lot of times with these contact cases, people will have this kind of intuitive message or instinct, some kind of gut instinct to drive out into some remote location and subsequently, have a close encounter with the UFO or even meet the occupants. So I heard the voice tell me to go to Area 51, and I'm thinking, well, that's not possible because I'm stuck here at work for several more hours. I have to close. But ironically, shortly thereafter, my manager asked me if I would like to leave early that night since business was slow, and I jumped on the opportunity. Was ready to go, shot out of there, and figured, I needed to hurry up and hit the road and get out to Area 51. Because I presumed at this point, my thinking was, well, either it's the same voice I'm used to, or this was some type of communication from ET who wants to meet up, roll out the red carpet, give me a nice tour of the universe, whatnot, tell me the answers to all the questions we have about everything, something to that effect. But so I head out of work. My mother's house was on the way where my brother had stayed, and he had, this was before phone cameras and all that. He had a nice 35 millimeter camera I wanted to borrow. Had swung by there hoping I could grab the camera, and unfortunately this was one of those nights where the camera wasn't available. Head out of there, ran home at that point, which lived not too far from Nellis Air Force Base. Wanted to let the wife know that I was heading out to, Area 51, which she was used to at this point. She knew I went out there quite often. And, of course, I wanted to get out of my work clothes and put something more appropriate on, which that particular night, I used to have this, well, I still have it, a green T-shirt with this humongous gray face on the front of it. And I figured, if I wear something like that and meet the occupants, it's kind of like, hey, I'm your friend. Here, I'm wearing a shirt with your face on it kind of deal. Don't probe me or whatever. So I go home, get changed, head out, get on the highway, heading out towards Area 51. And as you're driving out there, you get off at the Apex exit for Highway 93. And wasn't that far out of town. When you're heading on 93, it kind of heads north before it bends to the right, or bends towards, you're heading kind of a northeast direction. And it come around that corner, and it's just a straight shot for miles and miles. And off in the distance, I can see these lights on the road. And my first thought was, this is just another car on the road, the first car that's driving towards me. Didn't think much of it. The whole time going through my head, I'm thinking, if this is some kind of alien contact experience and, I'm going to meet them, I'm presuming at this point it's going to be more like a 50s kind of contact experience, like the old days where they would just land, sort of roll out the red carpet, welcome you on board, give you a tour of the ship, fly you around the universe, whatever, that sort of deal versus, kind of the later experiences we're used to hearing where they'd simply just take you against your will, do all kinds of experiments on you, probe you, whatever. And I'm thinking this just because, I was figured, well, I'm able to figure out they're communicating with me and wanting to meet me. So therefore, this is going to be some type of contact. And this whole thing is just playing through my head, all the different scenarios I might possibly run into. And I'm just, at the same time, I'm just flooring it. I'm speeding it. I want to get there as fast as I can because I don't know how much time I have or how long it's going to take, whatnot. So as I'm driving, I realized those lights I first saw way off in the distance aren't moving. And I figured at that point, it's probably a car that broke down and they may need some kind of help. Maybe they got a flat, something to that effect. And I'm debating on whether or not I should stop to help them or just fly by them. Because we're in the middle of nowhere. There is no cell phones then at that time. So if these people are trouble, then, I'm SOL if they run into a situation like that. Eventually, I decided I'm going to just fly by them unless it looks like it's an emergency. But by that point, I realized that the lights that I'm seeing were not actually on the road, but flying over the road. And again, my first reaction was something more down to earth. I'm thinking this is a police helicopter looking for speeders. And immediately I just kind of a reflex reaction slam on my brakes because I was flying at that point, like I said. And I'm thinking I'm about to drive right into a speed trap. And that thought didn't stick with me for long because, I realized how absurd it sounds for a police helicopter to be off in the middle of absolute nowhere, hovering right over the road looking for speeders. It just didn't make any sense. And that's when it hit me. That's when I realized that this may be why I was out there to begin with, what this voice was driving me towards. So I had brought my binoculars along, and I figured I could probably use them while I'm driving at the same time to see if I can get a look at this object, just in case it doesn't hang around by the time I get there. So I'm using my using the binoculars and driving, and I can certainly see it, though I couldn't make out the object. I could definitely see there's some lights just above the road. And trying to drive and use binoculars at the same time, though, is a pretty stupid idea because I nearly lost control of the car, especially at the speed I was going. So I decided to just toss them in the back seat and step on it to see if I can get there as fast as possible, which it did wait for me. So I stepped on it. It waited for me, and eventually I find myself pulling up underneath this UFO that was hovering over the road. And right off the bat, I can tell it's a black triangle, perfect equilateral black triangle with 9 light bulbs kind of in a V shape with the center point is at the front of the craft. And it was about 20 feet over the highway.
Wow,
so
that's
I parked
low. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was actually less than that. Certainly 20 feet is a good range, but I would say the bottom craft was under 20 feet, and the top of the craft was over that. But it was within that range, close enough that you could have, with a little wind behind you, hawk a loogie onto the underside of the craft or bust out the light bulbs with some rocks.
Now,
So
these were bulbs? Did they look like light bulbs, though?
Yeah, so the thing was, the craft, because I'm just on the outside of Las Vegas, you can see the city lights from, miles and miles away, and it illuminates the sky. So the craft was actually darker than the night sky behind it. And the skin of the craft was so dark you couldn't make out any detail on it whatsoever. It was just like looking into pitch black. But the light bulbs had plenty of detail to look at. So I figured, there's no point in wasting my time trying to make out any detail on the skin of the craft, and rather instead memorize these light bulbs. So light bulbs, probably had like a good 12-inch diameter, really good-sized lights. And on the inside is basically your typical silver cone that we're used to seeing with a flat glass like, flat face to it. And it had like the diamond-plated diffusion pattern on the glass. Inside of it, for the bulb itself, was using a simple coiled filament. And it looked like your standard everyday floodlight. Made here in the good old US of A, somewhere on Earth, whatnot. Certainly nothing extraterrestrial about it, just standard light bulbs. And I'm just looking at all these lights. They're all exactly the same. And I'm thinking, looking at them, it's clearly these are man-made light bulbs, and yet at that point, I thought everything was alien. From all the research, all the reading I had been doing, I was totally all 100% alien hypothesis. There are no man-made UFOs. There is no such thing as man-made UFOs. They simply don't exist. And yet here I am parked underneath this craft looking at these lights, and I'm saying there's nothing alien about these lights at all. They totally look man-made. And, I was stumped at that point. So I'm thinking, if I can grab my binoculars and get a really close-up look at these lights, maybe there might be some kind of identifying marks, maybe even the GE logo at the center of these bulbs. And I had tossed them in the back seat when I was approaching the craft. So I'm looking at the craft, trying not to take my eyes off it while I'm reaching behind my seat at the same time trying to feel for these binoculars. And I must have tossed them pretty good because I just felt around and couldn't find them. So I realized I'm going to have to take my eyes off the craft and look really fast to try to grab the binoculars. And I should probably mention, before I go that far, is that, the whole time I'm parked there, it was completely silent, no sound whatsoever. It was windy that night, so the wind is blowing through the brush. I can hear the kind of wispy sound that makes when the wind does that, but that was all I could hear. The car, no mechanical failures, no electrical failures. I'm even revving the engine while I'm parked there, and I can feel the car sway back and forth from the engine revving. And just doing little things like that. So much as I decided to pinch my left arm hard enough that I would draw blood, just to kind of feel that pain and that you're alive sensation, this is really going on. despite how surreal everything felt. But by the time I was reaching for the binoculars and take my eyes off the craft, I looked behind me, I grabbed the binoculars, turned back around, and the craft is gone. It dawned on me at that point that this craft must have been watching me just as much as I was watching it, because it knew precisely when I had taken my eyes off the craft. And so I scanned the horizon, trying to see if I can figure out where it went. And I looked more or less behind me to my 7 o'clock position, and I can see the craft flying off. And I got it a decent ways away from me in that short amount of time. And the way it flew was like nothing I've ever seen. Because typically I'm used to hearing these stories where the craft is basically flying in straight lines, straight up, straight down kind of deal, that sort of thing. But this craft was hugging the ground at 20 feet, regardless of what the ground did. So if the ground went down, it went down. If the ground went up, it went up. But regardless of what the ground did, the craft followed it.
Did it now? And did you see any wash or turbos, or any signs of any type of engine? What did it sound like?
Absolutely no sound whatsoever. But now, because it was a ways away from me and a little bit lower in elevation compared to where I was, and I had the binoculars in hand, I was able to zoom in on the craft with the binoculars and see the top side of the craft. So the top side was a tetrahedron, but short. And, it was all black, and black is probably wrong. It was more of a dark charcoal color rather than complete black. And no sign, no wings, no rudders, no tails, no engines, no props, nothing. Just a tetrahedron, short, black, perfect triangle. That was it. No other features than that. And as it's flying away, it got far enough to where it pivoted and started making like a right-hand turn towards the mountains and towards the Nellis Air Force Range. And it approached the mountains, and I'm thinking at any point it's going to shoot straight up and then fly straight over the mountains. But it actually climbed the side of the mountain like it were 4x4 up the side of a mountain, which was really weird to see. And it still kept its 20 feet distance basically from the ground, as if it were on autopilot or something, and just would always lock in that distance. And it just kind of shot up the side of the mountain. You see it reach the top of it, and then it just disappeared down the other side of it. And at that point...
What do you think was moving the craft, though, in your opinion, after you see it? What do you think was allowing it to, move?
Well, I mean, obviously, it didn't have any conventional means of propulsion that we're certainly used to in the civilian sector with your normal jet aircraft or your props, your helicopter type system. So obviously, whatever was making it fly was certainly exotic technology. You can probably say anti-gravity, certainly. It hanging in the air like it was defies gravity without any conventional means of propulsion that we're used to. Whether you want to say it was reverse engineered alien technology or whether it was our own engineering and ingenuity that came up with this. Often I say we don't give ourselves enough credit. We're quick to say, well, obviously it has to be alien technology, but I don't necessarily agree with that. Either way, it doesn't matter, though. Whatever it was appeared to be certainly made here on Earth.
Sure. I got a few more questions. I just want to ask you about this, but we've got to we're at the top of the hour, but I want to ask you a few more questions about the craft as well as what I'm getting here. You guys, tonight, as far as questions coming in, tonight we're with Shawn Kevin Jason, and we're talking about first his experiences with the voices that he heard that led him to Area 51, or that area where he witnessed this triangle craft. And that's where we are, and that's where we're going to pick up right when we come back. Stay with us.
Listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
777, and you are listening to The Fringe FM.
Get the Tea is the #1 cleansing tea in America. We cleanse you with organic ingredients, and when used daily, you can increase your energy. Cleanse from intruders that set up camp in your colon. Cleanse your colon and feel the difference. Colon cleanses can be uncomfortable. Not Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. Life Change Tea is mild yet truly effective. Cleanse your insides every day. Easy to make, easy to use, and feel the results. Are you sold? Okay, then here's how to order. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Look for our specials on the front page. Get the Tea also carries top-rated supplements for those who care about their health naturally. Again, log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com and feel the results. And for those of you that arm yourself with information, come to our webinar every other Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. That's every other Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific. You can sign up at getthetea.com.
I'm Ryan Gable, and I want to remind you to keep your radio, phone, tablet, or computer tuned to The Fringe FM and visit the website thefringe.fm to listen to the entire lineup of shows. You can also catch my broadcast, The Secret Teachings, Monday through Friday, beginning at 12 a.m. midnight U.S. Pacific Time, right here on The Fringe FM.
Do you want to know the truth? Are UFOs real? Are aliens visiting Earth? Are governments around the world hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO Seekers, official partner of The Fringe FM, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Join us as we investigate locations like Area 51 by subscribing on YouTube at youtube.com/UFO Seekers.
Hi, I'm Alex Exum, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
OMG! People are jumping on board to the Life Change Tea Regiment. Brew, steep, and drink for a gentle, taste-great cleanse. It's changing how they feel. See what everybody's talking about. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Life Change Tea aids in digestive slowdown and helps people get moving down a healthy path. We won't make claims. We'll just let you decide. Experience is much better than a commercial anyway. If you want results, log on to getthetea.com and purchase your super strength cleansing tea. You won't be disappointed. And if you're looking for some mind-body suggestions, go to YouTube and punch in the search bar Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. Put power into your health now. So, getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com for super strength tea. And YouTube, Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now for valuable suggestions. Getthetea.com. The tea that makes you go.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
This is Reverend John M. Polk. Please visit me at johnpolkmedia.com and visit my show, Quantum Hologram Matrix, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, every Tuesday on thefringe.fm.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners, did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Hola, Fringe listeners. This is Dave Cruz of Beyond the Strange, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
listening to Lighting the Void. The call-in number is 1-800-588-0335. If you would like to text, you can text in at 501-777-5631.
So we started this whole thing out with you talking about how you've had a few instances with hearing voices, and now you're at Area 51 watching a black triangle craft. This is incredible, man. Like, this is okay. So right off the bat, I'm just going to ask just a few questions so we can move on. Just some detailed stuff about the UFO, because I got to get this out of the way. I got to get a little bit nerdy with it. So the triangle craft, you said it got down 20 feet above the road or whatever, which is pretty low. You said that the lights and the bulbs didn't look, I mean, they looked like something that was made here, but the triangle craft, was it solid? It wasn't like boomerang. Did it have a cone? Did it have any fins, or was it just a triangle and that's it?
On the underside, it was a perfect equilateral triangle. All three sides of it were equal. And then the top of it, like I said, is a tetrahedron, which is just a three-sided pyramid. But it was short, so the bottom part of the triangle was, of course, longer than all the edges leading up to the point on the top of it. But basically, it was just four sides, the underside and the three sides on top.
Okay. All right. And when it took off, what speeds are we talking about here, if you could estimate?
I would say like a fast-moving, helicopter. If you've seen a helicopter booking it at high speed, it was moving at probably something relative to that.
Okay. All right. So when you saw this craft, you now you don't have any pictures of this thing, right? You were just looking at it with your binoculars. That's what you said?
Yeah, so as it was leaving, I was watching it in the binoculars as it left, and then climbed over that mountain and disappeared behind the other side of it. So I hung around for a few minutes longer, hoping to maybe catch it, climb over the top of another mountain, because, this was a range, so there were several mountains lined up that, I was expecting it to go over. But after it dropped behind that first row, I didn't see it again, and nor did it return. And I was thinking maybe at this point this was just a prelude. This was just an introduction, because I was a bit disappointed. I was, still expecting some kind of contact, a landing with the occupants to come out, introduce themselves, sort of thing. So I'm thinking, well, the message told me to go to Area 51. And so I'm going to continue on and go out to the base, thinking that, this was just the beginning and there's still more to come. So I continued on out towards the base, and still had a good hour and 45 minutes left in the drive, the whole time of which, this triangle encounter is just playing over and over in my head, and I'm still toying with the idea of what's to come. But I get out to the base, and I end up pulling off on the side of the highway, on the extraterrestrial highway, just as you're about to get off of that on a long dirt road that goes out to the entrance to the base. And I parked it there and just hung out there for a little while, waiting for anything to happen. But by that point, it more or less, dawned on me that that triangle experience was it. That was the whole reason I was told to go to Area 51. It was not to actually go to Area 51, but to be precisely right there at that specific time when that craft was hovering over the highway, not necessarily encountering anything at the base or around the base itself. So eventually, I turned around, drove back home. The return drive was uneventful. Nothing else happened, and that was it. I went home, woke up the wife, told her what happened. She was the least bit interested. Basically, oh, that's nice, I'm going back to bed, kind of deal. And I just kept it to myself for a while. And that was it for hearing that voice for many more years. Of course, this was March 27th of 1996. And some years later, I decided to move my family to Colorado. And it was here when I would hear the voice again for the last couple times. The last time I actually heard the voice it's been 20 years now. But following the UFO encounter with that black triangle, there were a few more incidents that finally gave me some type of insight into what this voice really is and what it means and how it works and why it works. So I have 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, and this was about the year 2000, and my daughter had been born, the last of 3. Not too long before this incident, she was still an infant, a crawler, rugrat, if you will, and we were living in Colorado Springs at the time. I was working out with Garden of Gods. It was kind of a really beautiful Red Rock area on the west end of town. And we were in a townhome, and we had these neighbors with a teenage daughter who we used as a babysitter. And she absolutely loved my daughter and enjoyed spending time with her. And one particular day, she asked if she can take my daughter over to her place and kind of play with her and whatnot. And I said, sure. I didn't have a problem with it because we trusted her. Like I said, she was our babysitter, so I thought nothing of it. And just going about things around the house when she comes flying in the front door, screaming my name, Shawn, Shawn, Shawn. And I can hear the panic in her voice, like something's bad, something went wrong, something, one of those dreads you don't want to know what happened. And run out to the living room, and she's holding my daughter, and my daughter's blue. And it's the first time I've ever seen a human body that's, just blue, like Smurf. And I didn't even realize a body could do that. And here I'm looking at my daughter, and she's blue as a Smurf. And I can tell she's still alive because her eyes are still moving, but she's not making any sound. And I realize she's choking on something, and it's totally blocking her airway, and she's not breathing. She's not getting any oxygen. And I'm just panicking at this point. I'm just freaking out, and she's screaming, and I'm trying to figure out what exactly I'm going to do to save her. With infants, CPR is different than it is with adults because they have smaller, frailer bodies. And I used to be trained in CPR because when I was younger, I was going to be a cop. And, of course, that was part of the training. And with infants, there were special techniques you use on them. And all of that in that moment was just gone. I couldn't recall any of that. And I'm trying to figure out, what the hell am I going to do? Because I know she doesn't have long left before she totally loses consciousness and her heart just stops. And I'm lying her on the ground, and I'm trying to do the Heimlich on her, and it's like you're watching your child die in front of you. It's like the absolute worst thing you could ever go through. And I'm just freaking out. And at the last minute, I got some wild idea that I'm going to hang her upside down. So I grab her by her ankles. I pull her ankles up to the side of my head, and I start jumping up and down. And when I would hit the ground, I would kind of push in on the diaphragm, like doing a Heimlich on her, but upside down, and trying to use gravity at the same time to help me dislodge whatever she was choking on. So I'd done this about 3 or 4 times, and on the 4th one, roughly, I hear a clink. And then I hear this, like, a vacuum, like a void, just, like you hear this just void just filling up. And it didn't even dawn on me because I'm still jumping up and down and trying to do this. And then she just lets out this blood-curdling scream. And I realized at that point she must be breathing. I looked down at her, and, all her color has returned to her. And apparently that tink I heard was a dime that flew out that she had swallowed.
My God.
And, at the last, she probably had seconds to go before she would have totally just lost consciousness and of course, died in my arms. And, that had a very profound and traumatic effect on me. And it definitely changed the way I was with her after that point, because I became really overprotective of her. And every little thing, everything she did, I had to be around watching her all the time. Because it's just the idea of, one of your children dying, or especially dying in your arms, was just too much for me to handle.
Yeah, I imagine.
So, she's still at the crawling age at that point. This was a 2-story townhome. And, we had the child-safe gates that would block the stairs going up and down. But, we knew eventually she was going to have to learn how to navigate these stairs. And my biggest fear was her tripping and falling downstairs, because at the base of the stairs was a stone fireplace, maybe like 1 foot away from the bottom step. So I had this fear that, she's going to trip and fall down these steps and slam up against that fireplace, and that would be it. So whenever I was home, without fail, anytime I ever heard her either going upstairs or downstairs, I stopped whatever I was doing and would escort her up and down. I wanted her to, learn how to navigate the stairs. So I didn't necessarily want to pick her up and take her up and downstairs. But at least if she was going to trip and fall, I would be right there should it happen, so I can catch her and nothing to worry about. And for whatever reason, every time I did this with her, I would created this mental exercise where I would picture her at the top of the stairs rolling down, and she would come to me, and I would drop down my arms and catch her. And it was the same mental exercise I would use over and over and over every time I walked her up and down the steps. And I kind of thought of it as like training, basically, so that should she ever fall, I'll be prepared, and I'll be ready to go catch her in the event she should ever fall. And this went on for months and months until one day I'm following her up the stairs, and I realize, she's got it mastered. She's, not once in all those times did she ever trip and fall down those stairs. So I'm thinking at this point, no, she's good to go. She's got it mastered. I don't really need to worry about her anymore, and I can just let her do it on her own.
Yeah.
So, and I did. I quit following her, and I let her do it on her own. And months went by after that, and she never had an accident. And then one day I'm in the living room, and I'm on my computer, and suddenly I hear the voice again telling me that my daughter's going to fall down the stairs. And same physical sensations I would always get the previous one. Now, again, I was dumbfounded because, the last time this happened was with the triangle UFO encounter. So I'm thinking, of course I know it's always been right. It's never failed me. And I'm thinking my daughter's nowhere around. But shortly thereafter, she comes, passes me, goes to the steps, the bottom steps. I'm thinking, okay, well, here we go. So I get up, get behind her, and I start walking up the steps with her. And I get maybe 3 steps up, and I'm thinking, this is ridiculous. I know she has these stairs mastered. There's no way she's going to fall down. So I kind of just stood there waiting for her as she continued up the staircase, and she disappears, around a turn at the top and gets all the way to the top floor. And at this point, I'm kind of staring off into space, kind of dumbfounded, like, okay, this voice has never been wrong. It has always been spot on. It told me she was going to fall down the stairs, and yet I just watched her climb all the way to the top floor and make it without any problems. So I'm lost in my own thoughts, not paying attention to anything. And suddenly I hear my wife screaming and yelling at me, who was behind me on the couch in the living room. And I turned and looked at her, and all I can see, I couldn't make out what she was saying. It was just, just a bunch of yelling and screaming, but she's pointing at the staircase. And I turn around, and just when I turn around, I see my daughter, who is rolling down the top of the stairs and rolling down towards me. And it was like a reflex, like muscle memory. There was no thought involved at it, at all. It was just instant boom reflex, drop my arms, scoop her up, bring her up, towards my chest. And, I'm just dumbfounded at this point. Well, of course, I'm checking her, making sure she's all right, no injuries, anything like that. But then I'm thinking, what just happened? Because I know she made it to the top floor, and yet, nonetheless, she fell down the steps. Something isn't right. Something doesn't jive with his voice, because this was no just normal accident where someone just rolls down the steps. There's something bigger, deeper going on with this. So I was dumbfounded. She was okay. And it was probably about a week later, I had a second accident with my daughter. We had gone out to see one of my wife's friends out in the country, and they have this really long driveway. And when we're getting there, I was thinking, they have a lot of vehicles. I don't want to be rude and take up one of these parking spots right in front of their house. Instead, I parked a little ways down the driveway on the side. Thought nothing of it. So while we're there, at one point, I decided I'm going to step outside to have a cigarette. And I'm out there smoking, and then I hear the voice again. And the voice tells me, your daughter's going to have her hand slammed in the car door.
My God.
And I'm thinking, okay, well, that's ridiculous. I'm out here by myself. My daughter's nowhere in sight. None of the kids are out there. I'm just totally out there by myself.
Are you still getting those deep, pitted feelings you were talking about when this voice happens?
Yeah, absolutely. Every time. And that's how I can distinguish between, one of these voices and just some wishful thinking or some kind of other, like, random, fool yourself kind of voice or whatnot. When I would feel this physical sensation in the pit, that's how I can, tell this was the real deal. But again, I'm kind of just like, well, it's not possible. The kids aren't outside. She's not outside. How is she going to get her hand slammed in the car door? It doesn't make any sense. My son comes out shortly thereafter, and he wants to get something out of the car. So I say, sure, go ahead. He walks down the driveway, goes to the passenger side, opens up the door, grabs one of his toys out of the car, and is just sitting there fiddling with it. Okay, no big deal. Soon thereafter, my daughter comes out of the house, and I'm like, okay, this is getting interesting, but she's still nowhere near the car. And she starts walking out towards the car to see what my son is doing. And I'm like, okay, now I can see it coming together. So I see what's going on here. So I yell at my son, Gabe, close the damn car door, over and over, close it. And I know he can hear me, but kids can be, ornery and not listening. And I know full well he hears me, but he's choosing to ignore me. And so I scream at him louder and louder each time, close the damn door. And he's just ignoring me. And I'm just watching her get closer and closer and closer to the vehicle. And she's walking towards the driver's side of the car. And I'm thinking, okay, I need to do something, because if I don't, this thing's going to happen and she's going to get her hand slammed in the car door. And finally I get fed up with yelling at him to close the car door. So I start booking it down the driveway, running towards the car, because I want to get to that car door and close it before she gets to it. But by the time I'm almost halfway to the car, I see her walking around the rear side of the vehicle, and he sees me booking for the car right at him, and he knows why I'm running out there, because he gets this look on his face like, oh, shit, that's going to whip my ass now, So without thinking anything, he just immediately goes to slam the car door shut. Without, looking, nothing, just hurry up and shut the door. At the same exact moment, my daughter was reaching in to the vehicle. So he slams the door right on her hand. At that precise moment, she was reaching into the vehicle, and she just lets out this blood-curdling scream. About the time I'm getting to the vehicle, and her hand is completely, the door is completely shut, and her hand is inside the car door. And, of course, I opened up the car door, and her hand was small enough that, fortunately, she didn't break anything, no broken bones, nothing like that, no cuts or anything. I was amazed how there were no injuries on her hand, but again, I realized something is really, really off with this voice, because this is not, it happened. The voice was right. The message was right. It certainly predicted the future. It said she's going to get her hand slammed in the car door, and she absolutely did. But again, I realized something else is at play here. And I was getting worried now. This is the second accident I've had with her in a week. And
the second
previously.
Yeah, the second voice is you. So you've heard the voice twice that warned you about her having an accident. Both times she had the accident. Yeah, I mean, this is getting pretty strange, actually. This is very odd. I'll tell you what, let's leave it right there. I hate to cut it off right there, too, but we'll have to leave it right there. Poor girl. Jeez. But we'll be right back with Shawn. And you guys, if you got any questions, you can call in. You can also put it in the Fringe FM chat, too, or text in. Shawn Kevin Jason is our guest tonight on Lighting the Void. We'll be right back after these messages.
With the wolves after hunting down a half-ton bison, I look forward to a mind-teetering escapade evening on the Fringe FM.
What's up, Joe? Hey, man, I just wanted to say your show, dude, keeps getting better and better and better. I love Lighting the Void and the Fringe FM.
Hello, lovers of the night and the Fringe FM. It's Mystic Mary Decina here.
And I'm Joe Roop, host of Lighting the Void. If you haven't heard our Cosmic Conditions show every new moon, it's grown wildly popular, just as I thought it would.
I want to take a moment to tell all of you that I'll be here live on the Fringe FM, 9 p.m. Pacific and the midnight hour Eastern, to give each of you an in-depth look at yourself through the stars and Mother Earth.
Psychic skeptic or faithful believer, you're in for a fun, insightful, and no-frills broadcast. You're going to experience a raw and real reading with true expertise alongside a 35-year seer.
So make sure you're on time Friday, September 27th, 9 p.m. Pacific and midnight Eastern. Savvy?
For your personal one-on-one reading with Mary Decina, visit maryducina.com, MaryDusina.com.
Right, me old Chiners. I know it's an ad break, but before you lot shoot off and make yourself a cup of Rosie Lee or whatever else it is you're going to sling down your Gregory Peck, you need to listen to me babble. If, like me, you found your way to Lighting the Void via a downloadable podcast, you might want to take a butcher's at the Fringe FM Wind and Kite. You won't Adam and Eve how many other shows there are or what they rabbit on about. Ancient history, conspiracy, the consciousness, the esoteric, the occult, metaphysics, parapolitical, ufology, technology and spirituality, to name but a few. They got featured hosts like Ryan Gable, Jeremy Scott, Alex Exum, Tim Doyle, Cortana and Gigi, Susanna Ross, the Reverend John Polk, Michael Deacon and J.D. Lewis. You might find yourself listening to the thoughts and theories of the author of the fish you just finished reading. Or you could pick up the dog and bone, call in and tell everyone your own beliefs or experiences. So do me a favour, before you put on the Ansel or crack open a bottle of vino or roll a joint, go to the Fringe FM and see what you're missing.
Hi, this is Kronox from Belgium and you're listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop.
Ew, yuck. They're unhealthy and gross. Bugs, I hate bugs. We keep a clean home, but occasionally bugs show up. Well, I found something that is tougher than bugs. Orange Guard. From contact, it kills bugs. Plus, Orange Guard kills hidden bugs and keeps new bugs away for weeks. I know. I use Orange Guard. Plus, all of the ingredients of Orange Guard are on the FDA generally regarded as safe list. Orange Guard may be used around food, humans, and pets. It promotes a healthier planet, and here's a bonus. Orange Guard cleans where it's sprayed. Plus, it comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Orange Guard.
You can get Orange Guard at Ace Hardware. And listen, folks, Orange Guard is tougher than bugs, and it's safe to use. Go to orangeguard.com. That's orangeguard.com.
You are listening to the Fringe FM, and I'm Michael Deacon reminding you can find my show right here on the Fringe FM every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 12 p.m. Eastern Time, or by going to michaeldeacon.com. The choice is yours.
Hey, this check is wrong. I worked a holiday and 7 hours of overtime. Not getting paid correctly is a real pain. It could also hurt our boss if our company provides out-of-compliance checks. That's right. Construction companies doing business with the government can get fined, or officials of the companies can go to jail if the checks aren't right. It's a law. The Davis-Bacon Act has 30 compliance issues for every check, but there is an easy way for construction companies to be in compliance. EMARS offers Compliant Client, a web-based system that finds and corrects all 30 of the possible out-of-compliance check issues. Users of Compliant Client report an 80% savings in time and money. Running a weekly payroll usually takes about 5 minutes. All 15,000 plus clients of EMARS have never had a legal compliance issue. Plus, they sleep better on check day. Contact EMARS at emarsinc.com or call 480-595-0466.
The truth is out there.
There's something out here.
And so are we. KTOK Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM.
To call Joe, pick up the phone, dial 1-800-588-0335, toll free from the United States or Canada.
Shawn, I got to tell you what's incredibly odd about this whole story. And I usually, when people are telling me stories like this, I don't, I'm a talk show host, so I like to talk. But I've just been sitting back listening to this story. It's kind of eerie, but it's very strange to me, man, because I've never heard anything like this when it comes to precog. Usually, and I'm just going to go on just a small rant here, but usually when people have precog, it's something they experience quite a bit in their life. These instances that have happened to you seem like they happen few and far between. Seems like it's trying to protect you, trying to warn you, trying to help you. Sometimes they're a year apart. Of course, with your daughter, they were, pretty close together. You say when you hear the voices, you feel like a certain feeling in your gut, like a kind of a rushing feeling. Of course, I'm probably butchering that. See, I've never heard of this before, and it's not deja vu. It's when you hear the voice. Do you see the vision in your head, or do you hear? What does the voice sound like?
Well, it just sounds like my own voice, but maybe separate from myself, even though typically we, think to ourselves in our heads, but it's that same feeling like it's part of you, but yet separate from you.
Okay. All right. So all right. I'm just curious here. So what happened? So she got her hand smashed in the door. I've seen that happen to kids so many times, and it hurts. I've had it happen to myself. Fell down the steps, almost suffocated. Was that? I'm hoping. Was that the last thing that happened to her after that, or did you have any more incidences after that?
Well, actually, there was a third one, and it was the last one that happened with her. And this was days after the car door accident. So I was in the kitchen doing dishes, and, they were young. Of course, we have a playground set up in the backyard. My boys were in the backyard swinging on the swing set. And my daughter runs by to go out the back door to go join them. And just when she gets out the door, just when she's slamming the door, I see a vision. And for me, it was shocking because this was the first time I saw a vision, and I did not hear the voice at all. Instead, I actually saw everything play out kind of in front of me, where I can see my boys on the swing set, and she's running towards the swing set. And suddenly, my oldest son swings full forward, kicks her in the face as she walks into it.
Oh,
and immediately upon seeing this vision, I screamed out her name, and the kitchen window was open. And, you know, within a second after screaming her name, I hear her screaming. And I'm already breaking for the door, trying to get outside as fast as I can. And I run outside, and I see her lying on the ground screaming, and my son is like, "No, Dad, it's not my fault. She walked into me." You know, and, you know, I'm yelling at the boys, "You need to be careful around your sister. You know better. You know, she doesn't pay attention, yada, yada, yada." But at the same time, I'm, you know, freaking out because I just saw a vision, and that was new to me, and I've never seen one before or since. And that, again, it was right, and she was hurt again for a third time now, and this was all within a span of 2 weeks. So now I'm freaking out thinking, how long is this going to go on? How many more times is the voice going to tell me she's going to get hurt when she does? Because I'm thinking eventually it's going to just keep going until she ends up dead. And somehow I know I'm responsible for these accidents. I just haven't pieced it together exactly how I am responsible for this happening to her. So, you know, she got kicked in the face pretty hard, but fortunately it was nothing serious. She definitely learned her lesson about, you know, paying more attention, but it was actually my fault that she got kicked in the face at all, as I'll get into. But that was the more or less last time I had heard the voice, with the exception of one other situation that I kind of disassociate from these other examples just because it's almost like a class of its own, which led up to a missing time experience with my boys.
Wow.
So,
okay, I don't know what to ask you about as far, because you said it was your fault that she got kicked.
Yeah, so what I thought was precognition, and it is, you know, and in some respects, because the voice is telling me future events, like in the case of my daughter, is giving me information about the future, about a future event that's going to transpire, and sure enough, it does. So in that respect, you know, it's precognition. You're getting information about the future that proves to be true. But the reason it proves to be true is because you had that information about the future to begin with. So the way all this works and what I've broken it down to is, you know, like we were saying earlier, usually when it comes to people saying they hear voices, you know, they're schizophrenic, they're crazy, mental issues, or, you know, it's God, it's the devil, it's a disembodied voice, it's telepathy, something along those lines. Now, if anyone has read the work of Jacques Vallée in his book Dimensions, he talks about a control system. And he compares this control system to an air conditioning unit or maybe cruise control in your vehicle. And why does he do that? And what does this have to do with precog and these experiences with my daughter and the triangle and all these other things I've talked about? So what this voice is technically is called an air signal. And
it's called what again? I'm sorry.
It's called an air signal.
An air signal.
Let's think about it. Let's think about it like this. You know, everyone should have an air conditioner in their home. You know, most people do at least. The way an air conditioner works is, for one, you have to relay information to it. Now, that information you're relaying to the thermostat, you're telling it what temperature you want to set the house at, which is the atmosphere of the house. You know, whether you want the house at 75, 72, whatever you prefer. Now, of course, if it's not already at that temperature, once you turn it on, you know, it's going to gauge the temperature in the air. It says you want it at 75, but the house is currently at 80 degrees. It's going to generate an air signal. That air signal is going to tell the unit to turn on because it's trying to close the gap between 75 and 80 degrees. So it generates an air signal. AC unit turns on. Slowly, the house starts to cool off until it eventually reaches 75 degrees. Once the thermostat recognizes that, you know, the output is reaching the input, that your desired temperature of 75 is equal to what it's measuring, it turns off. And at that point, you get the desired temperature you want. So what we're dealing here with these voices I've been hearing and precognition in general is it's not what we think it is. It's an air signal meant to bring about a specific result in the future. So we're used to cause and effect. You know, if you pour gasoline all over your car and light it with a match, it's going to ignite. You know, if you throw a baseball through a window, it's going to break. Cause and effect is the cornerstone of science, causality. But what we're going to learn in the future is that the future can influence the past. So take synchronicity, for example. You know, a lot of people talk about synchronicity in the New Age community as something like the universe is speaking to you. You know, it's some kind of sign from God that you're on the right path, something to that effect. What we're actually dealing with is basically a future event that is influencing the past, and you're responding to it before you actually experience it. So an example might be you're at home watching TV, and suddenly some old pal you went to high school with or elementary school with comes to mind, and you haven't thought about this person for years or eons, decades, you know, something to that effect. They just out of the blue pop in your mind. And you're wondering how this person is doing and what they're up to, and suddenly the phone rings next to you. You pick up the phone, and guess who's on the phone? Well, it's this pal you haven't talked to forever. They just happen to be town and decided to look you up and see if they can connect with you. Now, typically, we would say, well, you know, that's synchronicity. You know, you were just thinking about this person, and suddenly they called. You know, how strange. But in fact, it was a future event that you're responding to that you haven't experienced yet. And I can certainly give examples of that from my own personal experience where things have played out like that. But basically, cause and effect works both ways. So we can actually respond to and react to things that haven't necessarily happened yet, but they are certainly predetermined. So that would be synchronicity. Now, everyone experiences that one way or another, to where you kind of, you know, sense something, knew something, reacted to something, and then it actually happens. So that's where we get synchronicity. Now with precog, kind of like with the cop car examples in the very beginning when it first developed, that's more precog, where you're able to sense a future event, but you're also able to interpret that data. And rather just, you know, instead of maybe in my situation, I'm able to interpret it and say, yeah, there's a cop car coming down the street from this direction or that direction. Whereas in a synchronicity example, you may suddenly start talking about, oh, you know, Metro Police or this or that, and then there's the cop car. So precog, you're more or less able to interpret that data and then realize that this is a future event that you're interpreting. With the voices, however, what we're dealing with is a future event that influences the past in such a way that it's changing the past to create that future event. So take my daughter getting her hand slammed in the car door, for example. The only reason she even had her hand slammed in the car door is because I reacted to that information. Had I never got a message saying your daughter's going to get her hand slammed in the car door, the whole thing would have never happened. It wouldn't have existed. No, it would have never existed. The same with her falling down the stairs. The same with her getting kicked in the face, which the reason that happened is because when I screamed out her name, she got distracted, was looking back at the house, not paying attention, and thereby got kicked in the face. So the voice is actually causing these accidents to happen. It's not telling you what's going to happen. It's telling you what's going to happen because it's responsible for causing what's going to happen. Another example might be, say, Joe Blow is walking down the street on his lunch break from work, and he has his diner he goes and eats at every day, and you know, kind of some ordinary guy who just orders the same thing every day, sits in the same spot every day, kind of thing. He likes, you know, doing the routine, and he's halfway on the way to the diner, and suddenly he hears a voice tell him, "You're about to get ran over by a car." And he reacts to that, freaking out, thinking, well, I'm closer to the diner than I am to work, so I'm going to just make a break for it, run for the diner, hurry up and get there. If I get off the street, no worries. The car's not going to run me over at that point. Runs, gets to the diner, gets inside, grabs his usual chair, booth he sits at every day. And at that point, he's thinking, okay, I'm perfectly safe now. Nothing's going to happen to me, and nothing to worry about. The waitress comes over, gives him as usual. She's standing there, and she suddenly just starts screaming. And he turns and looks out the window that she's looking at, and he just sees his car come barreling in through the front of the diner, running him over. Okay, so we can see there in that situation, certainly the voice was right, the prediction was right. The precog said he was going to be ran over by the car, and most certainly was. The purpose of the voice wasn't to warn him. It wasn't to hopefully help him avoid getting ran over.
It was to manifest
by the car. Yeah, exactly. The purpose of that voice was to make sure he was going to run to that diner, be in that booth at the very specific time he needed to be in order to get ran over by that car. So that's what I come to realize with my experience. What we're dealing with is retrocausality. That is using an air signal to generate a future event by changing the past. And it's even more than that, because when we think of reality, like with Einstein, who says we live in a deterministic reality where everything is predictable and predicted from the beginning to the end of time. Everything that's going to happen has already happened, and we're basically just living out our life like watching a movie. And of course, then you have the multiverse theory, where there's all these parallel realities that you exist in, but for whatever reason, you're stuck in this one reality, and you have no idea what you're doing in all these other realities. But nonetheless, if that's the case, still on your single world line, basically it's all predicted from beginning to end. If we're dealing with retrocausality, where a potential future event suddenly becomes predetermined enough that it changes the past, thereby causing itself to happen, in a manner of speaking, we're talking about sliding between parallel realities, where you had one possible, or you were on one path, the future event on another parallel line has caused basically a causal pathway to that new line. So think of it again like the air conditioner. That air signal tells the unit to turn on. Now, that's basically creating the causal pathway between 80 degrees and 75 degrees, because it's now turning the air conditioner on, which is going to cool off, your house. And that is, cause and effect. Basically, as it drops down to 75 degrees, it's giving you a pathway between these 2 points. So again, with this voice, it's basically the air signal that is responsible for generating a causal pathway between the timeline you were on and the new timeline you're entering.
All right. So this really kind of goes along and corresponds with some of the things we've discussed when it comes to elementals. Now, I'm just going to run this by you, but we would talk about things on this program about learning to accept or reject thoughts as they come into your head for a reason. Because it is my belief, whether people want to call it psychic attacks or they want to call it something scientific, that when whatever this thing presents to you, some people even call it demons even, but whatever it presents to you, it presents it to you as an offer. And in our minds, a lot of times we accept it with less than a second, like in a millisecond, we accept it, then we emotionally react, and the cause and effect happens that way in our bodies, and the emotion and energy happens, and then it just happens. Where I get tripped up in what you're talking about is when you accept it in your mind, how is it working to where it affects other people other than you? That's where I'm kind of getting confused. And I'm not saying that it's not real. It definitely feels and seems real, what you're telling me. It just seems like I've heard this before on the kind of the occult side of things, not so much the scientific side, but I think both sides are valid.
Well, I'm a little lost on the question. So you're wondering exactly how does it affect other people?
Right. So usually when we have what we've discussed on the show, when it comes to things like the occult and paranormal and stuff, when you have a thought, it could be a demon or an elemental or whatever people call them, and you accept that thought, then that becomes your reality. But
okay, I see what you're saying. So here's another example I can give then. Let's say a mother decides to load up her children into the back of the station wagon, and she drives down the street, drives that station wagon off into the lake, jumps out, drowns all her kids. Cops come out and arrest her, and she tells the police that, well, the devil told me I need to kill my children. So I loaded them up in the station wagon, drove them out to the lake, and drowned them all. And she's absolutely 100% convinced that she heard a voice that sounded, demonic and was telling her to kill her kids. So how does that play out? Well, typically we'll say, oh, obviously she's schizophrenic, she has mental issues, she's certainly crazy. I mean, she just killed all her kids. Whereas the religious angle, we're going to say, well, yes, that was the devil working his ways, forcing, making her commit murder and kill all her children. What is another possible explanation for that situation? Well, it goes back to my own personal experiences. The way the air signal works is it'll portray itself in whatever ways it needs to in order to bring about the new future timeline that is trying to manifest. So if that means coming across as Satan in order to scare the hell out of you, just to drive enough fear into you that you're going to do it, then that's how it will present itself. Now, here's the thing I didn't get into is you'll notice on the different messages I got, they came across in two different ways. So like the earlier ones, like run, keep playing, go to Area 51, those are commands. Straight up just telling you what to do. Whereas with my daughter, it came across as information, like your daughter's going to fall down the stairs, she's going to get her hand slammed in the door, she's going to get kicked in the face. And these are more like it's relaying information to you, not necessarily commanding you to do something. And there was a reason for these two differences. When it comes across as a command, it's because it's something that you are willing to do. You're willing to go through and follow through and do. Versus with my daughter, it comes across as information because it's something you want to prevent or stop. And you want to try to make sure it doesn't happen, even though your attempt to prevent it from happening is actually what causes. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's how the information the voice relays. It's either, if it's a command, it's something you're willing to do, whereas if it's information, it's usually something you're going to try to prevent from happening. And then the other thing was, I said it was always like an audible voice I would hear in my head, except for that last time where I actually saw the vision. Now, what I realized about that is because every one of those times I heard the voice, I actually saw the whole thing unfold with my own eyes. Versus with my daughter, when the accident occurred, I couldn't actually see it take place. I heard it, but I couldn't actually see it. So what I realized was when I see it unfold with my own eyes, I would hear it coming across as the voice. Whereas in the case where I couldn't see it unfold, then it relayed the information as a vision. So again, with this lady who drowned her daughters, or, who drowned her kids in the lake, and she heard a voice telling her, kill your kids. It relayed itself to her that way, one, because it knew that, one, she wanted to kill her kids. She probably had been dwelling on this thought for a long period of time, wanting her kids dead, but not willing to go through with it herself. Otherwise, she didn't want to take responsibility for killing her kids. But if the situation presented itself to where the voice would come across as something demonic, Satan, whatever, then she would be okay with killing her children in that situation because she can easily lay blame, the devil made me do it. So it's a situation where she probably spent a great deal of time thinking about killing her children, but never having it, enough I won't say courage, but, enough to go through it with herself until she was basically, pushed into it by this voice.
All right. So with that being said, what do you think these voices are coming from? Do you think
well, it's a control system. So it's a function. It's something we can all do, and it's something that if it didn't exist, none of this could exist. Basically, it's another term for it is called a bootstrap paradox, and a bootstrap paradox or retrocausality is a situation where it's basically a repeating circle. The future event causes something in the past to happen, something in the past to happen, then causes that future event to happen. It's kind of like this looping circle. And you've probably seen it in movies. A good example is Somewhere in Time, which is one of my favorite time travel movies, kind of romantic. Christopher Reeves travels back in time, falls in love with that lady. I can't even remember her name now, but they have this watch where in the future, she meets up with him, hands him a watch, and says, come back to me. And he takes this watch with him, travels back in time, meets up with her, and ends up giving her the watch then. So we have this watch that basically has no beginning or ending. It just suddenly materializes in the past, dematerializes in the future. And this watch is produced by the bootstrap paradox. And typically we think, well, with something like this, there has to be a first timeline, a timeline in which, the minerals for this watch was mined, a clockmaker put it all together, sold in the store, someone bought the watch, and it ended up in one of their possessions. And then somehow this watch got stuck in a time loop to where it actually just seems like it manifests out of thin air. And the problem is there is no first timeline. There is no first beginning where this watch was actually built by a clockmaker. It can actually manifest from nothing. And that's where a lot of this really gets fuzzy, because now we're essentially talking about, people call it the law of attraction, the secret, and we describe it as, manifesting things, or kind of like frequency and magnets, we're attracting stuff to that, whatever it is we desire. But that's not what's actually going on. What we're actually doing is basically altering the world line, altering our timeline by changing it to an alternate timeline with a new future event.
I gotcha. Okay.
And
I got some questions about this, because this is pretty intense here. But we're at the top of the hour. I got to take a break. Look, if you guys, I know you got questions too. I will get to those. I've seen a few, but I just want to ask a few more questions about kind of like the morality of it, because it does seem to me that, I guess it seems like evil intent, but maybe it's not. Shawn will let us know what he thinks is going on when we come back. More Lighting the Void coming up right after this short break. Stay with us.
Lighting the Void Radio.
Alex Exum.
This is Alex Exum of the Exum Experience in Live Talk, where we discuss current events, society, and culture. My shows are based in actuality, actual existence, contrasted with what was intended, expected, or believed. You can listen to me live Tuesdays at 7 p.m. only on KTLK The Fringe FM.
Listen, I want to tell you about G.I. Joy from GetTheT.com. It's the best alchemical concoction of goodies for your stomach and digestive system I can recommend, and that's all based on my experience. Packed with colostrum, acidophilus, aloe, peppermint, and turmeric. If you do your own research, then you know this is the bee's knees for the stomach and digestion. Now, due to Big Brother's ears and the eye in the sky, I can't go into the details about what it helped me with. All I can say is I got relief. It's non-GMO, no fillers, no preservatives, manufactured right here in the US of A, and delivered to you by the only people who stay on top of the game and are out in front. Go grab a bottle of G.I. Joy at getthetea.com and see what all the fuss is about. Again, that's getthetea.com.
Hi, this is Sammy. Join us in the Deep South as we're lighting the void with Joe Roop on the Fringe FM.
Lighting the Void is proud to announce Mind and Magic's Protection and Defense Course for protection from magical and psychic attacks. This is not a joke. Magic practitioners are on the rise, and with that comes attacks from baneful or black magicians that try to harm or hurt others for their own selfish reasons. If you are not a believer in psychic attacks, then this isn't for you. If you are, and you want the power to defend yourself and your family and home, then I highly suggest you grab Freighter Xavier's Protection and Defense Course. In this course, you will learn how to tell if you are under attack from a natural source or if an individual is attacking you. The 4 forms of curses and attacks. How to remove self-imposed curses. The correct way to cleanse your home from negativity or malevolent entities. How to make your own holy water. What you should always keep near or under your bed. Herbs that banish negativity and promote purity. The most powerful banishing rituals on the planet. And for those that seem to want to harm you the most, how to put your enemies in a hell pit of their own making. You can also learn protection against shadow people and other entities. Or are you just in a bad planetary alignment? Even how to get rid of an enemy using a tic-tac box. It does not matter what your faith or belief is, this will work. Click the banner on the website at lightingthevoid.com or go to lightingthevoid.com/Xavier.
Yohoy there. Gigi here from Shift Happens. Do you like to boogie down to topics such as ufology, the occult, and the mysteries behind our reality? Well, I invite you to join us every Friday night at 7 p.m. Pacific, that's 10 p.m. Eastern, as we like to punch that curiosity button and tickle that fancy. We tickle that fancy, but yeah, I don't know if that's the right analogy, but there's certainly a lot of tickling going on over here at Ship Happens.
We all have that story to tell in our lives. The winds were howling, the ground shook, you could hear rushing water, and then history repeats itself. When there's no power, refrigeration fails, stores with their shelves stripped bare, ATMs can't operate, deliveries stop. Then what? These events can last days or weeks. You need a plan. In statements made during recent interviews, FEMA Administrator Brock Long has repeatedly urged all Americans to understand 3 truths. FEMA is broke, the system is broken. If this is the new normal, Americans can't rely on federal cavalry when disaster strikes. Don't get caught out in the elements empty-handed. Prepare with us by going to preparewiththefringe.com and get your 2-week food supply. 92 servings, 8 food varieties with 25-year shelf life. Normally $137, now only $75. Or get a month's supply, normally $247, now only $147, shipped in 1 business day. Just go to preparewiththefringe.com or call 888-440-7931. That's 888-440-7931. Get this great offer and be prepared while it lasts.
This is Elle. I listen to Lighting the Void because it's interactive radio with good content, interesting guests, and a humble host, sharing his journey through the esoteric. Hey, Joe Roop. Thanks for having us along for the ride.
Thank you so much. What a delightful evening.
Well, I got a lot of ground to cover.
Shawn Kevin Jason, and this is not what I thought this was going to be about. The precog stories, you leading up to seeing the UFO. I had no idea that this is where this was going, and I hear what you're saying about the voices, like how they become manifest, and it seems like mind control type thing. But what I can't get over, Shawn, is when you talked about your daughter, right? What was happening to her? She almost suffocated. She fell down the steps, right? She got her hand slammed in the door. And when I asked you earlier, I was like, so where does the voice come from? You don't think at all that possibly it could be an evil spirit of some type or an evil elemental thing? Do you think that it's purely scientifically and psychologically explained, so to speak?
Absolutely, because my thinking is, when it comes to cause and effect, you have prograde and retrograde. Now, prograde we're used to. That's everyday cause and effect. But when it comes to retrograde causality, there needs to be a mechanism in place, a control system that's going to get you from point A to B. And if a future event can influence the past enough to where it changes the past, thereby causing that future event, there needs to be a mechanism, which is what this precognition serves, is given that retrocausality an avenue to create a causal pathway between these 2 points. And back to the whole Bootstrap paradox thing, let me put it this way. If a man could travel back in time and thereby meet up with his mother and, in fact, impregnate his own mother with himself, we have a Bootstrap paradox. And if time travel is possible, then something like that is entirely possible. That a time traveler, could go back in time, impregnate his mother with himself, thereby becoming both. Well, what's odd is he would be both his son and his father. Now, if we look into the past, is there any example to where we have someone in human history that claims they are both the son and the father? We start to find a lot of coincidences between how all this stuff works, and of course, the person we all know as Jesus Christ. And what gets really strange is you start finding a lot of parallels in the Bible and Scripture, what they're describing, and what we call the Bootstrap paradox. And that's where we really start to get into some strange stuff there. So with my daughter, why did it happen 3 times? Versus in the other cases, other examples, it only happened once. What I suspect is happening is, again, back to the AC example. Now, if your AC and heater are both turned on, you set the temperature to 75 degrees. It cools off the house, but it overshoots. So instead of, reaching 75, it passes it. And I'll say it cools it off to 73 degrees. So you were 75 shortly for a little while, but passed it, went down to 73. The heater kicks in. So now it heats up the house, shoot past 75 again, but maybe you get to 76, 77. Well, now the AC kicks back in. So now it's trying to cool it off again. It's down to 74. The heater kicks in, gets back up to 75. The reason it happened 3 times with my daughter is I suspect that when retrocausality happens and influences the past, thereby creating a new timeline with the future event, is there's sometimes an oscillation in a new timeline to where the event will repeat itself until the new timeline is kind of more or less, in that AC example, evened out to where it's, set. So when these things happen, it can oscillate back and forth, causing the event to repeat itself. And we can see that same thing happen in various Bible stories, as well as with the Bootstrap. The odd thing is with a physical object that's created by a Bootstrap paradox is when the paradox, or when the loop closes, whatever physical objects are created within the confines of that loop must dematerialize. So in the case of, Jesus Christ, we see, of course, at the end, when he's crucified on the cross and, rises after 3 days, body dematerializes, as the story goes, as he rose to heaven. Or in the story with Peter, where he denied Jesus 3 times that night. You see a lot of patterns between this Bootstrap paradox and the Bible and other examples. So like with the UFO case, someone gets some inkling to go out into the desert, middle of nowhere, because whatever it was that was driving them to drive out there, and then they subsequently have an encounter with a UFO that materializes out of thin air. They interact with it, the craft dematerializes. Now, nuts and bolts theory is, well, they have some type of technology that allows this craft to basically phase in and out of our reality, that they're that far advanced. But on the other hand, this is also describing a Bootstrap paradox.
There, like the ETs, or what do you mean?
What do you mean? When I say they, I'm just describing the community in general, or, various examples. When I say they, though, we suspect, it's aliens, of course, communicating with him to go out there. They have contact with whoever is, if they do, whoever is occupying that craft.
Okay, so let me see if I understand this. And I got a text message into the show. I got a few of them, but this one kind of helps me if you can answer this question. So, is your theory the future timeline changes, so past events are rearranged by persuasion to realign the sequence of events? Is that what's going on?
More or less, yeah. So if you think of, like, again, the AC example, the whole purpose of the air signal is to turn the AC on and create a pathway from 80 degrees to 75 degrees. The same thing is going on with this voice. It's essentially the future event, the potential future event that now becomes predetermined the second you get that air signal, because it's going to generate a new causal pathway compared to the one you were previously on to this new timeline. So it is, I think of time and the timeline, we think of it as a straight line, just this straight timeline of events, whereas I see it more like, Einstein described time more like a river. And if you think of, the roots of a tree, a river, the veins in your body, how they all kind of offshoot, rather than the straight line. So when you hear this voice that's being produced, by the future event, this air signal, is basically you are diverging from the timeline you were on into a new timeline.
Interesting. Okay.
So
what I'm trying to do is figure out why. Why does it have to do that? Why can't we just go along with the one timeline where we make our choices? Are you saying that there has to be time travelers, or there has to be, it just doesn't, I'm trying to figure out the why of all this, why it has to happen in the first place.
Well, when you think of the law of attraction and the secret, it is real. It may not necessarily work the way it's always been portrayed as. I think it more falls in line with what I'm describing. But if we live in a universe where causality can work in reverse, then there has to be a mechanism for that purpose. Now, and I'll go into more detail and say that what I'm essentially describing is creation. And I know when you say creation, most people instantly go back to the Bible, the creation story, the 7 days of creation. But what I'm talking about is if you have a future event that's influencing the past, thereby causing itself, on one hand, that's a creative series, that's a creative chain to where the linear aspect of it, the evolutionary path of that, is when it creates the causal pathway from the past event to the future event. So it's kind of like the hen and the egg. One says, well, the egg came first. The other says, no, God created the hen first. In reality, both of these events occurred at the same time. And essentially, the future event was influencing the past, thereby creating a causal pathway back to that future event. So it's kind of like a time loop, to where both sides of it are equally responsible for creating it. But at the same time, there needs to be some kind of information transfer to begin with. So again, with the AC example, the thermostat's not going to do absolutely anything until you first tell it what you want. So again, with the law of attraction, whatever you're willing into existence is how this thing seems to work. And we think of free will as, today I decided to wear my black shirt instead of my green shirt or my red shirt, or, I decided to have spaghetti for dinner versus a hot dog. That's usually what we define free will as. But most of that is simply causality, cause and effect. Whatever choices you make are simply the end result of every choice that preceded it. Whereas when you're dealing with retrocausality, you're dealing with information from the future and reacting to that. It's where there is no precursor. There is nothing that came before it that was influencing that response to it. So it's the event is creating itself. Get a drink here.
Huh. Yeah, this has got to be one of the wildest things I've ever heard, but it does make sense. It really kind of does. At first it didn't, because I can't help but think, what about the mundane things, right? So I get the whole Jesus Christ, the evolution of humanity type deal, but little bitty mundane things like, well, I wouldn't say what happened to you was mundane at all. Or let's take the arcade, for example. What is necessary about all that? Or is it's not even a necessary type thing? It's like, what? I'm wondering if you're trying to tell me that the time is working both ways, like it's a loop in both ways, or it doesn't exist at all.
Well, they both exist at the same time. So the present and the future both exist at the same time. And the past, at least what's already been finished and done with, you can't go back and change. But this moment right now, even though it's our present, will be our past tomorrow. Now, if there were a potential future event tomorrow that's different than the normal path we're on right now, if we stick to causality, if something could, create an air signal that leads us on that new path, we would receive it now, even though this is for the future, and at the same time, that future event, here we are in the past.
Okay.
It gets pretty confusing, certainly, when we're talking about space-time and time travel and future influencing the past. I mean, it would kind of be the same thing as you travel back in time, and, one of the main things everyone wants to do when they travel in time is kill Adolf Hitler, it seems. So we're going to travel back in time, we kill Adolf Hitler. The moment we kill Adolf Hitler, obviously we've changed the future, even though killing him is a problem in itself because it would create a paradox. But if we can circumvent all these paradoxes, it would create, kill Hitler, thereby creating a new future in which Hitler didn't exist. World War II never happened. We create a new world. But whose world did we create? Did we change the future for everyone that lives on this planet, or just for that one person that went back in time and killed Hitler? Because if the future only changed for that one person that went back in time and killed Hitler, then who are all those people in that world that came into being simply because of the decision that one person made?
All right, so what happened then?
Oh, go ahead.
But I missed something, because what happened at first, you're hearing this voice and you're getting the kind of this gut punch thing, and these things happen. What made you come to this realization? Was it just you just trying to wrap your mind around it so much, or was it the missing time experience that you wanted to talk about? Is that what it was?
Well, for me, it was researching it, trying to figure out what was going on with me, and more of a down-to-earth explanation, at least as far as I think science is going, and the future of all that as far as physics and the nature of space-time and how we experience it, and how consciousness ties into all of this, because certainly that's a big part. And I feel this control system is actually part of consciousness and part of how we're interacting with space-time and this reality. But there's some other things I also wanted to get into, at least on my research I've been working on for the last few years. So kind of on a semi-related topic, I've been looking at space-time. I was working on my book, basically, explaining all these things, going into all my experiences and my theories and ideas on what was happening. And while I was writing the book, I stumbled on, what I didn't stumble on is a question we've probably all asked at one point or another, but it's one we usually don't take that seriously because it seems like a non-question. So I put the book aside because I really wanted to investigate this more and figure out if there's anything to it. And so it's the nature of time. When we think of time, we have different measures for it. The day, the month, the year, and we look to the skies and we can relate with these measures. Of course, we think of a day as one complete rotation of the Earth on its axis, or the month, of course, is tied to the moon and its revolution around the Earth, and then the year, of course, and its revolution around the sun. And so as far as those measures of time, those make sense. But when it comes to the 7-day week, we look to nature and we can't find any 7-day cycle. Why exactly is a week 7 days? And of course, most people will go back to the Bible and say, well, that's because of the creation story in Genesis. That's why a week is 7 days. Or you have the skeptical scientists who will say, well, it's just because a week is semi-close to 1/4 of a lunar cycle. And you kind of got this battle, creation versus evolution, going over the explanation of the 7-day week. Yet no one can find a 7-day cycle in nature, which is something I've been working on finding for the last few years. So when it comes to the 7-day cycle, they did find one in biology, of chronobiology, which is the study of cycles in nature biology. And the human body has a number of cycles. We have a 24-hour cycle, so every 24 hours, we need a rest. There's the 30-day or month cycle, which most women can attest to. And then, of course, there's also a yearly cycle. But it turns out there's also a 7-day cycle in biology. And some scientists theorize that is that cycle that kind of led up to the whole creation 7-day cycle in the week, that somehow this was just deep in our core and it kind of bubbled up to the surface and we ended up creating a 7-day week around it. So in my search for trying to better understand the 7-day cycle and if there's anything to it, I looked at a number of things, and
that's what you're working on right now, right? So there's a lot of sevens, though, and there's a lot of sevens on this planet, though. If you look at it that way, right? There's 7 colors of the rainbow. That's all in nature.
And of course, you have the 7 planets they knew back then, and of course, the days of the week were named after Sunday is the sun, Monday the moon, Saturday Saturn, and so on and so forth. And scientists, of course, say, well, that's why the week is 7 days. They knew of the 7 bodies, heavenly bodies, named after that. But what I found was it turns out our 7-day week is actually a speed of light measurement. And coincidentally enough, that our 7-day week is precisely aligned with 1 light minute relative to the Earth's speed around the sun. So our orbit is elliptical around the sun. It's not a perfect circle, although it's pretty darn close to it. And our speed varies from 29.29 kilometers per second up to 30.29 kilometers per second, depending on where we are in our rotation around the sun. Our average speed is just over 29.78 kilometers per second. And when you take our speed per second, our average speed per second, you'll find that, well, first of all, there's 2 measures of a day. So most of us are aware of the 24-hour day, which is a mean solar day as measured by the sun from, high noon to high noon the next day. there is also the sidereal day, which is measured by the stars and the equator. So a true day is actually 23 hours and 56 minutes 4 seconds. And that is measured by the equator being precisely aligned with a distant star, which is how long it takes us to rotate on our axis. And of course, because we're rotating around the sun, it takes us just a little under 4 more minutes before the sun actually reaches the same spot in the sky 24 hours apart. After 7 days, that spreads about 27 and a half minutes. And what we'll find that between the sidereal week and the mean solar week is 1 light minute, exactly. So when a scientist says, well, it's a quarter of the lunar cycle, the match is about 94-95%. Whereas if we compare the 7-day week with the speed of the light, it's a 99% match. It's almost right on the money.
Interesting.
So then the question is, our measures of time, as far as the second, the minute, and the week go, are some of the oldest measures that have been with us, since the days of Sumeria, Mesopotamia, all the way back to then. And then the question, is raised, were they aware of the speed of light back then, and that's why it's 7 days, or is it just pure coincidence and they just got lucky because they like the number 7 and it just happens to line up? 1 light minute is equal to 7 days.
We're on a last break here, but what I find interesting about this whole thing is, I thought you were coming on here to talk about a UFO experience and precognition, and yet, you've heard voices, you had experiences with time and experiences with UFOs, and you've chased the truth all the way down to cosmological functions, to the number 7 and the 7 ancient planets. Kind of fitting for the show, I would think. The number 7, I think that things just keep coming back to weird, spooky-like truths that we don't yet understand, but we kind of know there's a truth underlying there somewhere deep in the void. That's exactly where we are with Shawn Kevin Jason. We'll be right back.
What's up? This is James Cruz. You listen to KCLK The Fringe FM.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Every Saturday at midnight here on The Fringe FM, you can join me, Stephen Canby, the host of The Midnight Hour Show. On my show, we explore paranormal topics with a skeptical view. We search for evidence. We search for proof. We search for the truth. Because who better than me, my friends, a magician, a man trained in the art of deception and misdirection? Who better than me to investigate for you some of the greatest mysteries on planet Earth? And I hope you will join me every Saturday night here on The Fringe FM at midnight Eastern Standard Time for the Midnight Hour Show, 9 p.m. Pacific. I want you to join me here every Saturday night at midnight for an incredible journey. Consider yourself invited. Brand new episodes of The Midnight Hour Show, available exclusively every Saturday night here on The Fringe FM. Consider yourself invited.
Join us on
Hey, it's Jeremy Scott now. Hear me on KTLK The Fringe FM. Live Saturdays at 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern. You got it.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners, did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
I like to listen to Lighting the Void because of the guests, the content, and the host, Joe Roop. He's smart, he's intelligent, and he seems to ask the questions that we all have on our mind. We're all searching for the truth, and Joe helps us get closer to it. I love this show. I love this show. I love this show. Lighting the Void.
Do you want to know the truth? Are UFOs real? Are aliens visiting Earth? Are governments around the world hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO Seekers, official partner of the Fringe FM, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Join us as we investigate locations like Area 51 by subscribing on YouTube at youtube.com/UFO Seekers.
Introducing Shadow Light Tarot from Waking Canvas. The Fringe FM's new contributing artist, Eric Tesey. This hand-illustrated black and white self-published deck serves as a reinvention of the tarot, never before witnessed. Each of the several suits of this 88-card deck lineup form an infinite panoramic scene. Even the included visual companion guidebook is entirely hand-illustrated, cover to cover, with beautiful visuals and esoteric symbols and artwork. The newly released deck comes in a custom magnetic box with its own travel pouch. The Shadow Light Tarot Premium Deck and its travel-sized mini deck Wonderlight Tarot are both available now from WakingCanvas.com. If you use the code word FRINGE, that's F-R-I-N-G-E at checkout, you'll receive an extra 10% off your entire order. To discover more, including a free reading and time lapses of all the illustrated artwork, make your way over to WakingCanvas.com today. That's WakingCanvas.com.
Hi, this is Aaron Hunter, host of Real Paranormal Activity, the podcast, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void. Tonight, our guest, Shawn Kevin Jason, who has took us down a very winding road of strange events, voices, synchronicities, UFO sightings, all to discover his theory of what is going on with time as well as the cycles. And before the break, you were talking about the cycle of 7 that you're now searching for. And you also brought up Bible quotes and religion, which is kind of fascinating. It's perfect for the show. Listen real quick, I want to tell you guys tomorrow night on the program, we're going to have Lloyd Auerbach on the program. So if you're a fan of Lloyd, come on out. That's going to be an interesting one. We're going to talk deep mind stuff and hypnotherapy and more, hypnotherapy training. So that'll be a good show too. So yeah, do you have any idea other than what you were describing before, this secret of 7? Because I'm thinking about Bible verses too, like Revelations and stuff, the 7 candlesticks, and other religions as well have this, has 7 in it too. There's 7, I don't know if it's the mother letters, I forget which letters it is, but there's also 7 letters in the Hebrew alphabet that are very specific. So it's pretty steeped in religion. It's pretty steeped in hermetics too, which I was talking to you about during the break. What do you think's going on here, man? If you had your best guess, what do you think this is proving? That this creation is real, or is that what you're getting at, and that it's all set in stone? Is this a fate, destiny type thing, or do you not know yet?
Certainly, I think fate, destiny is part of it, predestination, a predetermined future or path. The whole concept of the Bootstrap paradox, especially if we think about the nature of reality and the Big Bang, the idea was prior to the Big Bang, there was nothing, just a void. And eventually, at some point, everything will collapse back in on itself to a single point. So essentially, they're describing a Bootstrap paradox where nothing can exist prior to or after the boundaries of this time loop. And with the whole 7 thing, it is certainly curious that, not just the light minute is aligned with the 7th day, but so is the light second, which happens to be aligned with our rotation, the speed of our rotation. You'll hear sometimes people say, well, based on the speed of light, it can travel around the equator just over 7 times in 1 second. But the same goes true that amount of time it takes the equator to travel 1 light second, which is just over 7 days. And whether or not that plays into the Bible, certainly that's where I looked for clues when I was trying to determine whether or not there's any 7-day cycles out there. Because, on the first day, he created light, and then on the 7th day, supposedly God rested. On the 7th day, the light rested. So I began thinking, well, maybe they're referring or hinting at the speed of light. And if we think about rest, like in terms of music, a pause, a break, a full count, then maybe it means a complete cycle. And certainly it would seem that on the 7th day we have 2 complete cycles, a light minute and a light second, both of which are tied to the speed of our rotation and the speed of our revolution around the sun. But it was just one of those things I was looking into and seeing if there was certainly something to it, if there was more to it than, what we're used to hearing. I kind of dropped the whole UFO thing a couple of years ago because I wanted to spend more time researching other things like that. I'd even spent a good year researching icefall reports and got really in depth into that. And it's just a number of things kind of either related or unrelated to the whole thing. I know on one of the breaks we were talking about the whole Department of Defense is looking at using precognition to train soldiers on the battlefield, that they might be able to use this ability to predict danger and things of that sort. So having explained everything I did, you might see why that could be a bad idea. Because if we train soldiers to use this ability in battle and combat, they might run into a problem where they're not actually predicting a dangerous situation, but actually being the cause for that dangerous situation. So, they're trying to save their buddy in combat. Suddenly they see him getting shot, and thereby they try to prevent it from happening, and they're the cause, the reason their buddy got shot or killed in combat. So it could actually backfire on them in those situations. So it probably wouldn't be a good idea to even try using it for that purpose.
Do you think that anybody in the higher ups, because we've had so many shootings and weird stuff that happens, like wars, MK Ultra, all these different projects, do you think anybody in the higher ups, as far as governments or secret projects, know about your theory based on what you're saying on time and these cycles?
Well, there's the work of Jacques Vallée, and I'm certain he is going down that pathway. And there's actually another guy who I met last year. He put out a book. His name is Dr. Eric Wargo, and his book is called Time Loops. Now, he's also a precog like me, but with him, his experiences always happen in a dream state. So he's never had an awaking precog experience like I have with the voice and everything. But his book was mostly about the science, some of which I touched on tonight. I mean, we didn't even get into like closed time-like curves and time loops or CTCs, a lot of which he'll cover the Bootstrap paradox. But if people looked up his book, you can certainly get the science side of it. We had exchanged a number of emails, so I can see he's on the same path I am. We have some disagreements on some of our ideas on how this all plays out, but there are certainly some people out there that are going down that pathway, and I certainly think that's going to be the future in the next decade or two as far as, you know, looking at these paranormal cases, whether they be UFOs or psychic abilities, ghosts. It seems there's an underlying connection between all of it. That ties everything together, and certainly consciousness, space-time is going to play a big part of that. And when it comes to investigating these things, we don't even think to look for any violations of causality because, you know, it's never really crossed our minds yet. But certainly they're there, and will probably be looked at more in the future. And the government, I would imagine, would have to know a lot of this stuff already at some level. Certainly, if, you know, I was able to make these deductions and conclude, you know, from the voices and experiences I've had, I would think someone there has, you know, reached the same ideas and theories.
So when we have an incident like say a school shooting, do you think if we could prevent that if we learned what's going on there? Or even things that happen, like when that guy dressed up like the Joker and shot those people in the theater, or when the guy said the Uber app was telling him to do it, told him to kill people. See, it seems like, to me, it seems like somebody or something is aware of what you're talking about and is using it in crazy ways, if that makes any sense.
Well, I mean, I would guess there would be some kind of fine line between a future event that's influencing the past by generating the air signal, thereby causing the itself, versus some kind of technology that's able to implant a voice in your head, making you think you're going crazy and eventually forcing you to do that. And certainly, you know, there is mental illness. There is people that are just, you know, batshit crazy and are going to do things like that for whatever reason, and doesn't have to violate causality. Not that retrocausality does, but, you know, they can do it on their own accord. Because if they would have to be able to understand how the future is going to play out, you know, like in my situation, there's no way they can know that, you know, if it were the government telling me, hey, your daughter's going to fall down the stairs, that she's actually going to walk all the way up the stairs, eventually change her mind, come back down, and thereby fall down the stairs. So, you know, like I said, there would be a fine line between something that's naturally occurring, like those situations, versus something that's being forced, either through some kind of technology that, you know, like I said, it's a voice in their head and makes people do things.
Yeah, that's some pretty wild stuff, man. That's pretty wild. I would love to have. I hope he can come on the show. Actually, I'm sure Patrick's listening. Patrick will try to get him on the show because I kind of want to explore this some more. I mean, I like exploring. A lot of these ideas that you're talking about have been sort of esoteric things we've discussed already, but it would be fantastic to have a scientific explanation for these types of theories, and you've already kind of talked about that. But when it comes to time travel, I'm sure you've listened to all the famous time travel stories, right? For the most part. Do you think that we are actually doing that right now? That we know something about it, that we're doing that?
I mean, certainly if the future can influence and change the past, there is something going on. Whether or not we've built technology that can take advantage of CDCs and thereby travel to the past. So we know already that we can travel into the future if we can just travel at the speed of light. But the past is, of course, a different beast. It would be cool to think if we had that technology, but certainly, again, if you travel to the past, you can't do anything that you haven't already done. You may go to the past with certain ideas what you're going to do, but when you get there, you're going to find that you can only do what was already predetermined to do.
That's kind of sad, though, don't you think? Like predetermined existences where choice is an illusion seems kind of powerless, if you ask me. Like, we can't.
Well, it's not really an illusion because you still make your own choices. You still own all your choices, and in the end, you're going to decide what it is you're going to do. But it's kind of like you find out why you make those decisions, more or less.
So you're going in a certain direction regardless.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah, and certainly that's a big part of the Bootstrap paradox and retrocausality and all of that is, you need a causal pathway, get from A to B.
Well, I'm just dumbfounded at all this, actually, because it's a lot to take in. I'll have to go back. This is probably one of those episodes where I'm going to actually have to do something that I've never, ever, ever done, but maybe once or twice in my life, is actually go back and listen to this episode again, because I hate listening to myself again, right? But to get all this stuff in what you're saying, I'm probably going to have to do it again because it's a lot, and it sounds to me like there's a lot more about this that you didn't really get to talk about.
Well, it's not just that, too. There's other experiences I've had to where, I haven't even touched on, from the house we lived in with poltergeist experiences to encounters with a werewolf, a lady in white. So a bunch of other experiences I've had that didn't even touch on.
You had an encounter with a werewolf?
There's a lot more to talk about. Yeah, when I was a kid, I had encountered one twice. And again, I have an explanation for it. So, I mean, at first it sounds pretty insane, but certainly some bizarre experiences, aside from just a precog and a UFO.
I'm almost certain we can find a place for you here on this radio station to talk about that if you're willing to come do it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because that is, but you're saying there's, even for those things, lady in white, werewolf, poltergeist, paranormal activity, all that stuff really has a scientific explanation based on the theories that you're talking about now.
Maybe not necessarily based on these same theories with retrocausality, but certainly some things that could begin to explain them, yeah.
Yeah, that's either way. That would be really cool to tell me. So can you tell me real quick about because we got a few minutes. Just tell me real quick about when you say lady in white, what was that about? Give us a tease so people want you to come back.
Well, you remember when I said when I was hearing the voices and I cleaned up my act and figured that was the end of that just before that whole softball game incident. I had an encounter with this lady in white when I was at home. And without saying too much, she came to me one evening, and the most absolutely beautiful woman I've ever seen in my life. I mean, perfection, her skin, her complexion, just everything about her was perfect. And she wore this white dress, and it was a very, very modest dress. The sleeves went all the way down to her wrist. The dress went all the way up to her neck and all the way down to where you couldn't see her feet. Very modest. And she glowed, had this just glowing white aura around her. And I could feel this energy between us, as if she were shooting some kind of beam into my chest, just kind of like energy connection between us. And I felt this love coming from her to where it was like our senses on Earth are just seriously dulled down to where we barely feel anything. Even when you feel the most love for someone on this planet, it wouldn't even compare to what, I was feeling from this lady in white. It was like every atom in your body was just electrified with the feeling of love. It was the most euphoric feeling I've ever had, and nothing even compared. And at the same time, she was telling me how proud she was of me. And just got this great sense of pride coming from her. And of course, we certainly don't have time to go into the reason why she was feeling proud of me. But it was probably the most beautiful experience I've ever had, even though on some levels it wasn't real like what we think of as being real.
Yeah, wow. That is fascinating. I kind of almost wish we could talk about that. Well, I wish we had a few more hours to talk about that, man. But I think I think I know when we need to talk about that. So yeah, we would love it if you could come back and talk to us about that, because that is really fascinating to me. The energy that you're talking about. I've had some people talk about some experiences like that, earth-shattering type energetic stuff that just doesn't seem real, and it's full of love like you've never felt. That is pretty amazing, man. And we're ending the show this way, right? So you've got how many stories that you could tell us? I think when you come back, how much time do you think you could give us again? Another 3 hours?
Oh yeah, I can easily fill another 3 hours, I'm sure.
Wow, man. Yeah, that would be cool. Listen, since you have spent so much time with us, do you have any links, any events, any radio shows, anything that you want to let everybody know that where you're at or where you're going to be?
Well, if anyone wants to catch me on the CW, I did a show on Area 51 on CW, and you can catch that on their app, the CW Seed. It's Mysteries Decoded, their Area 51 special, which aired last week. You can catch a short interview there. Travel Channel is going to have an Area 51 special here in about a week and a half, and you can catch an interview with me on that as well. Other than that, just look up my name on Facebook. You can find my page there. I really don't have a website, books, or anything like that to promote or sell or push. Just experiences to talk about and research to share, and that's it.
Fantastic. That's what we love here, man. It was a very intriguing and very, very interesting stories and very interesting experiences that you've had. And thank you for coming on again. And yes, I will get that link shared with the archives. And again, I want to just say I really appreciate you telling us the story, at least that story front to back. That was very interesting, Shawn. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me, Joe. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to tell my story and share it with people and get it out there.
Absolutely. We'll do it again. And guys, don't forget, same time, same channel tomorrow night. And please don't copy the show without written permission. Music was by Chronox, guitar by Bundy. A huge shout out to Pacho Patrick, our producer here, as well as Don, Dennis, Lady Ann, Eric Markham, Jeremy Scott, all of the supporters, and all of you in the Discord chat. We'll see you back here tomorrow night, same time. Stay tuned if you're listening live for the Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable coming up. See you guys tomorrow night. Good night.
On this program do not necessarily reflect those of the Fringe FM, KTLK Digital Broadcasting, its sponsors, affiliates, or staff. Listener discretion is advised.
There's a fruit store on our street. It's run by a freak. And he keeps good things to eat, but you should hear him speak. When you ask him anything, he never